up! Oh, what kind of bird are you anyways? You're some kind of pterodactyl? I'm fine.
Welcome to Valheim, Butter. I've been expecting you.
Valheim? How did I get inside of Valheim?
Worry not about what brought you here, and focus only on the task at hand. Your challenge is to spend 100 days here, on hardcore difficulty.
100 days on hardcore? Are you out of your mind? This game is insanely hard. Please tell me I'm at least allowed to die.
Dying is allowed, but you'll reset all of your skills and lose all of the items that you had.
Wait a second, isn't the map disabled on hardcore?
You can use your map.
Oh, thank Odin.
Yeah, that setting is bullshit.
Well, at least we agree on something. Am I allowed to cheese things?
You can cheese a little.
You're just making this up as you go along, aren't you?
No.
You totally are.
I know you are, but what am I?
See, that didn't even make any sense. How do I know I can trust you to let me out of here once this challenge is done?
You have my word, Butter. If you spend 100 days here, I will let you leave the realm of Valheim. Battling the ancient deer Ichthir is your first task. You shouldn't delay the inevitable.
Alright, let's get started. Day 1 began and I was pretty stoked to get started. This raven named Hugin pops in from time to share game hints to help out new players, which is fortunate because despite my playtime, I'm still incredibly noob at this game. I spent a couple minutes gathering resources and decided to craft the hammer and stone axe. Building a base was one of my top priorities for the first few days, so I put the stone axe to use almost immediately. That is, until I found this old wooden shack and decided to show off my expert game knowledge. For those of you unaware, you can disassemble structures out in the world with a building hammer as long as you have the appropriate workbench nearby. This is by far one of the fastest and easiest ways to acquire wood in the early game, so I took advantage of it where I could. With these newfound resources, I started to slap down the humble beginnings of a base, but a Greatling decided to intervene. As Josh Strife Hayes would say,
so behold, combat.
Combat in Valheim is simultaneously super fast-paced while also being the slowest f***ing thing you've ever experienced. Now, I've never played the Dark Souls games before, but anytime I've seen gameplay footage of them, I feel that it bears a striking resemblance to Valheim. Enemies have certain tells when they're about to perform a move, and it's up to you as a player to recognize that animation and act accordingly. That could be in the form of a block, a dodge, or just a simple juke to avoid taking damage, all the while taking advantage of the very small openings that are left for you to counterattack. One-on-one combat isn't that bad, but as you'll see later on, things get a bit messy when multiple enemies are involved, all with different special attacks and all attacking at different intervals. Anyways, I slapped down as many walls as I could before running out of wood, and came across this patch of raspberries in the woods. One thing Valheim does extremely well is making lower-tier resources useful at pretty much any level. As new recipes are unlocked, lower-tier foods such as the simple raspberry remain relevant, and since I can't grow my own berries in vanilla Valheim, I always made the effort to mark their locations on my map. Now you might be thinking that hardcore mode doesn't seem all that punishing so far, but that's where you'd be wrong. I'm not only in constant danger from pretty much every type of creature in the game, but oftentimes I am my own worst enemy. Oh.
You just stop.
No. I was really hoping to survive at least the first day of this challenge, but I digress. Honestly, this was probably the best time to kick the bucket, because nearly all of the resources I had accumulated went straight into that base that I was building. I got back to work cutting trees until I had enough wood to finish building my base. I slapped down a bed, a storage box, a campfire, and a small roof over the campfire to keep it from going out when it rains. I laid my head down on my bed made entirely out of wood for some reason, and achieved probably the worst night's sleep possible on a bed made entirely out of wood. No, seriously, like the pillow and the blanket too? Who the hell builds a bed like this? Day 2 began with a hearty breakfast of boar meat and necktail, which now that I'm thinking about it sounds like a euphemism for something else.
Holy Lord, Almighty Father, everlasting God, who once...
I actually ended up making 3 cooking racks over the fire so I could mass-produce food a bit faster. Food is really important in Valheim, as otherwise something like this could happen.
Holy shit.
With death being as punishing as it was, I decided to make Day 2 all about gathering food. If I was going to survive here, I needed to have a decent HP and stamina pool to work with. I tried sneaking up on this deer, but the stone axe just wasn't cutting it for DPS. You're out of your mind if you think I didn't chase that little bitch down and finish the job, though. I'm petty like that. Yes! Haha, get fucked. I found another building to tear apart, slaughtered some more boars, and located a few raspberry patches that I marked on my map. Just when I thought things were starting to go my way, this happened.
Whoa! Holy shit, this is Black Forest.
Ah! So remember before when I said that one-on-one fights weren't too bad, but multiple enemies with different attack styles really tend to complicate things? This is what I was talking about. It's really tough to time melee dodges against someone when I'm getting constantly pummeled by rocks in the background. Roll dodging and parrying is tough too, since enemies have collision and basically just get in the way. Anyways, long story short...
Alrighty then.
So as you just witnessed, basically all of Day 2's progress was just lost. I didn't get discouraged though. I just ran it back. Punching trees, chopping trees, stealth attacking deer, but this time it actually worked, and disassembling more buildings for wood. I did end up acquiring some resources in the end, plus all of my map markers still exist, so all in all, it wasn't a completely wasted day. I approached Day 3 with renewed vigor. I learned my lesson from the day before. Stop being greedy and bank more often. I should know this from playing old school RuneScape for as long as I have. For the record, stealth attacks did sometimes work if I got lucky and crit, which is how I managed to get most of my deer hide early on. Boars and necktails weren't nearly as hard to kill since they fought back, but deer were going to be an issue until I got my hands on a bow. In the meantime, I decided to make a flint knife, which ended up being my best-in-slot melee weapon for a while. It has a special lunge attack that deals some decent damage and lets me close the distance to enemies, perfect for stealth attacking animals.
Oh, yeah.
This attack was incredibly fun and addicting to use, but the flint knife also held up as just a good melee weapon in general. Fast attacks, no penalty to movement speed, and it hit pretty hard. If I lined things up just right, I could even get multiple kills with a single lunge attack.
Oh, 2 for 1.
As fortune would have it, I stumbled across this little village in the meadows just brimming with wild boars, raspberries, and treasure chests full of valuables. While things like coins and amber didn't do much for me right now, they would certainly become incredibly useful later once I found a merchant, so it was important to stockpile on these things as much as possible. Honestly though, the most valuable part of this whole place were the buildings. I pulled hundreds of wood from this place, which saved me a ton of slow woodcutting with a stone axe. Now I couldn't actually carry all these resources at the time, so I built a chest to store them in and marked the location on my map to pick it up later. I had accumulated quite the stockpile of food, leather scraps, and deer hide by the end of the day, so I decided to head back to base. I slapped down some storage boxes and rested my head on my bed made entirely out of wood. Day 4 was starting off strong with my first ever crude bow and wooden arrows. This thing made killing deer much more likely, but still not guaranteed. There was a ton of projectile drop with this first bow, and when combined with all the foliage it gets in a way, it made landing shots pretty tough. With a bit of practice though, I was starting to dial in my shots and account for all this. But even with that, kills weren't guaranteed because the bow didn't always one-shot. I tore down some buildings, killed a bunch of animals, and marked some more raspberry spots, all of which eventually culminated into what you're seeing now. Quite the haul for Day 4, if I do say so myself. From the very start of this challenge, I had hoped to have the first boss killed by Day 5, and despite all the setbacks, I was actually on pace to do just that. I couldn't just run into this fight blindly though. I had no idea how hard it was going to be on hardcore mode, so I reasoned that I should work on getting some gear upgrades before I jumped into it. As much as it hurt, I turned some of my hard-earned leather scraps into some rag armor for the fight. It was at this point that I recalled I had unlocked some new workbench upgrades that I hadn't built yet, and upon slapping one of them down, I learned the leather armor set f*** me. But that was a problem I'd have to deal with tomorrow, not today. Today, I had to rest. It was now tomorrow, and no longer yesterday, which meant that tomorrow's problem was now today's problem, so goodbye precious deer hide. I really wanted to make this deer hide cape too, but I didn't have enough bone scraps to make it yet. I reasoned that fire arrows were probably going to be my highest source of DPS during the boss fight, so I prioritized making those with a healthy supply of wood arrows as a backup. While the day was still young, I figured I would try my best to find some bone scraps for that deer hide cape, but then I found this beehive. Acquiring a queen bee to make my own beehive this early on was going to be massive. Honey was super important at literally every stage of the game, so if I could start farming it now, it was going to set me up nicely for later. Oddly enough, I found another beehive not far from the first one and looted a second queen bee. Now, unbeknownst to me, I had once again found the Black Forest biome and got attacked, but this time I was far more prepared. My armor and weapon upgrades were paying off, and it was nice to see that progress was being made. I also teabagged the shit out of them afterwards to assert my dominance, as one would normally do. I found some carrot seeds on the edge of the Black Forest biome, and did actually manage to find a few burial sites for bone scraps, but not enough to make the cape yet. Anyways, I was running out of daylight and decided I should get this boss fight rolling. Like I said before, I wasn't exactly sure how tough this was going to be, so I only took the bare minimum in case I died. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have built my base directly next to the boss spawn, but I digress. And with the slapping of one deer head upon the altar, Eikthyr was born!
My bow broke. Whew. Oh, what an ending.
What an ending indeed, Pastbana. What an ending indeed. Killing Eikthyr was the first step in making true progress in Valheim, as it not only provided me with a stamina-based ability that was useful for travel, but also gave me access to the Antler Pickaxe. This thing would make shaping landscape and gathering stone much easier, but more importantly, it would give me access to copper and tin nodes in the Black Forest biome. As one final f*** you to Eikthyr and his kin, I made a deer hide rug to adorn my floor. Not only was this an absolute assertion of dominance, but also helped to boost my comfort level, which raised the timer on my rested buff. This was going to be massively important if I was going to venture into the Black Forest biome, and little did I know just how difficult that was going to be.
Congratulations, Bana. You've passed the first of many trials. Eikthyr was but one small, infinitesimal piece of the puzzle.
Well, why do you gotta say it like that?
He was basically the easiest thing for you to take down.
I mean, he wasn't that easy. Give me some credit.
A child with a rattler could have taken down that deer.
Yeah, okay.
My Parkinsonian Tourette's-twitching grandfather could have beaten him with nothing but a diaper.
Okay, I get it. He was easy. Let's just move on.
The Elder will be much more of a challenge for someone as weak and feeble as you.
Oh, for the love of Odin.
I mean, just look at those arms. Do you even lift, bro?
Okay, I'm leaving. Day 6 started off with ho shit.
Just keep packing it in.
I was hoping to plant those carrot seeds I had found, but forgot that I couldn't until I unlocked the cultivator. I did end up placing down those 2 beehives I talked about earlier, though, as I figured they might as well start producing honey. Venturing into the Black Forest biome was the real meat and potatoes of today, though. Now that I had the Antler Pickaxe, I could start accumulating copper and tin. The only problem was, I still didn't have the best gear for the job. As it turns out, stab weapons don't work so great on creatures that don't have flesh, so these skeletons were pretty resilient. I thought for sure I was going to die at this moment when I got stuck on a fern, but luckily I was able to get some gap and whittle them down. I came across my first buried crypts not long after, and oddly enough the entrance was completely blocked off by a rock that had to be mined. I didn't make it too far before being swarmed by Grey Dwarfs though, and when I say swarmed, I'm not exaggerating.
Oh my god.
I held out for as long as I could, kiting and using my bow for DPS, but ultimately, I just got overwhelmed.
Oh.
Luckily, I had enough spare resources at the base to recreate my gear setup, and I was back in the fight in no time. As it turns out, NPCs don't despawn in Valheim, so all of those Grey Dwarves that I failed to kill last time were waiting for me when I got back. I whittled them down one by one, and eventually came out on top. I managed to find a different burial chambers just on the border of the Black Forest biome, and decided to peek inside. Yellow mushrooms are actually a pretty solid stamina food early on, so I was excited to start getting my hands on some. But yellow mushrooms were honestly the least rewarding things in these dungeons. The main reason for completing these things was for the Surtling cores so I could make a kiln and smelter to begin smelting metal. Now you're all too familiar with my poor weapon dilemma at this point in time, but I feel the skeleton fight is a pretty good reinforcement. My DPS sucks, which means I have to fight in a manner that's unconventional, to say the least. Things were going pretty good up until I failed to dodge a single attack from the skeleton.
Whoa.
I decided that I should probably head back to base and sleep the night off before proceeding any further, but then I was attacked by this Grey Dwarf Shaman. For those of you unaware, these things have a ranged poison attack that deals a boatload of damage, so it's really important that I keep my distance here. Oh yeah, and they constantly heal themselves and allies with this green AoE, as if my DPS wasn't already lacking enough. Anyways, after a lot of monotonous kiting and frustrating stamina management, I was finally able to take him down and headed back to base to sleep the night off. As Day 7's light broke through the treetops, I opted for an early morning hunt. I felt that I needed to get some more gear upgrades before pushing any more dungeons, especially in the weapons department. Leather scraps were my main bottleneck at this time, which made boars my primary target. So I snorted a line of those yellow mushrooms and ran through the meadows like Wolverine and Logan, tearing apart all of the boars I could find. I even came across a few 1-star and 2-star ones, which offered way more resources than the lame no-star boars. I also stumbled across another small village in my travels, which happened to have another beehive just right for the taking. Eventually I made my way back to base from a long day of hunting, and I was able to make the tanning rack. While this didn't immediately unlock anything for me, I knew it was going to be useful when upgrading things in the future. Unfortunately, this ate pretty much all of those leather scraps I had acquired, which meant that I was back out for another late night hunt. Flash forwards through a lot, and bam, baby! Got myself a sick new wood shield and club. With my new gear in hand, I pushed the Black Forest at daybreak to see how I could manage myself now. The answer was simple. Not very good. Considering that a single arrow from the skeleton staggered me, I wasn't holding out any hopes that my plan was going to work. At the very least, the club was a decent enough weapon versus these things, so my efforts weren't entirely for nothing. As soon as I loaded back into the dungeon again, that skeleton was still waiting for me.
Holy shit.
Obviously, my plan to block or parry this guy's attacks wasn't going to work, but what was going to work was cheesing the hell out of this fight. Now, the shield wasn't entirely useless and did help get me through a few of the fights in here, but for the most part, it was pretty unreliable. I ended up clearing the rest of this dungeon, but I didn't find any Surtling cores or the next boss fight location, which were the main reasons I was trying to complete it. The first dungeon I had found was still unexplored though, so I mined out the entrance and went inside. I did manage to find a Surtling core pretty quickly, but I was going to need at least 10 of these to make the kiln and smelter. I was going to push in deeper, but then I saw a ghost.
Oh shit.
And I don't f*** with no ghosts. I cheesed a few more skeleton fights and even had to rush this evil bone pile to get through one of the other chambers, but it was worth it in the end. I found 6 more Surtling cores, a bunch of valuables, and the next boss fight location in this single chamber. I was going to push this other room while I was at it, but after dropping to only 34 HP, I decided against it. I returned to base, flattened out some of the ground out back, and placed down the kiln to start producing charcoal. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough Surtling cores for the smelter yet, which meant that I was heading back into the Black Forest to finish the job. To say that I was cheesing this fight is an understatement, but my tactics were working, and that's what matters. At least I thought they were until this 1-star skeleton spawned and shattered the door in a single hit. If you ever think I'm playing it too cautious with my approach, I refer you to the following clip.
Oh.
Yeah, forget this, I'm out, I'm going to sleep. Day 9 was here and I'm running it back. The third time is the charm, right?
Oh.
Okay, maybe not, but my plan of getting this 1-star separated actually worked. I'm basically a fondue restaurant with the amount of cheese that I serve this skeleton, but the results are what actually matters in the end. Don't worry though, because another one spawned immediately after the first one, and I had to take him down in a similar fashion. Fortunately, my perseverance, nay, my stubbornness, paid off as I walked away with 3 more Surtling cores from the final room. I ran back to base and constructed my very first smelter. A fine piece of technology, if I do say so myself. Now I just needed some metal to smelt. Killing all of those skeletons finally netted me enough bone scraps to make the deer hide cape I wanted, which looked positively sweet, if I do say so myself. Finding copper and tin was my new top priority, and after a bit of exploration, I managed to find my first ever deposit. Now, mining this stuff is extremely tedious and downright dangerous, as the noise always attracts enemies and ain't nobody got time for that! I persevered for as long as I could, though, basically mining between waves of enemies until my pickaxe broke and night fell, at which point I decided to return to base. I got jumped by this 1-star Grey Dwarf Shaman, though, which I had no hope of killing in my current situation, so I ran. I decided to craft a bunch of fire arrows when I got back to base to remedy this in the future. Then I loaded all of that copper I had mined into the smelter and plopped onto my completely solid wooden bedding for a terrible night's sleep. The next morning I went running out to my smelter to claim my copper bars. This unlocked the forge, which I was able to place on my small platform above the workbench. At the moment, I was only able to make a copper knife, but I knew this would change once I found some tin ore. I knew I was going to need lots more copper though, so I'm back to that deposit I had found to mine out some more. I returned to base once my inventory was full so I could fill up my smelter, and then I got right back to it. Now, of course I was getting swarmed by Grey Dwarves and skeletons the entire time, but I'll spare you the details. There wasn't much daylight left at this point, so I decided to spend what little time I had cutting down trees in the Black Forest. I needed regular wood for charcoal and core wood for various weapons and structures, so this made the best use of my time. Day 11 was a glorious day, and that's because I had finally gathered the resources I needed to craft the Stagbreaker. I even had enough materials to upgrade it one time, alongside a few pieces of my leather armor. The Stagbreaker was definitely the star of the show, though. It had a huge AoE attack capable of damaging and knocking back multiple enemies. Now, I had never used this hammer personally before because it was always a buddy of mine's favorite weapon, but now that I've experienced it for myself firsthand, I can understand what Palpatine was on about. This thing basically trivialized all of the tough dungeon fights I was struggling with. Not only was it blunt damage, which skeletons are weak to, but it's AoE that can actually extend through walls and doors, meaning I can cheese the hell out of these tight corridors. But clearing more dungeons was honestly on the back burner for the time being, as I still needed lots of copper and tin. It was nice to know that I finally had a decent weapon to fall back on for defense, though. As I was mining out more of the copper deposit I had found earlier, I noticed a Grey Dwarf nest nearby. These nests are incredibly dangerous because they constantly produce aggressive NPCs, so it was in my best interest to take it out. Plus, they drop ancient seeds, 3 of which are needed to fight the Elder. I found another nest not far from the first one, but this one managed to pump out 2 1-star Grey Dwarves and a Grey Dwarf Brute at the same time, which made for a very interesting fight.
Whoa.
I even dropped as low as 6 HP at one point, which had me strongly reconsidering my decision to attack this nest. Now luckily, I am a master at Ring Around the Rosie, so these mobs didn't stand a chance. I didn't really learn my lesson though, because I reapproached the same nest and was met with pretty much the same combat scenario. Things went as expected, but I did finally come out on top, which is really all that matters. I decided that 3 times was pushing it though, so I returned to base and slept the night off. The next morning I decided to make a copper knife as another solid melee weapon to fall back on. The Stagbreaker was great, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I just needed some quick DPS that didn't lock me in a long animation. Just when I was testing it out for the first time though, this 2-star skeleton materialized out of nowhere and scared the daylights out of me.
Whoa.
If there are still any of you watching that think I'm playing it too safe on hardcore mode, let this clip serve as reinforcement for my cautionary gameplay. This difficulty is f***ing hard. The real mission for today was to find some tin ore, which can be located by lakes or streams in the Black Forest. Every time I thought I was making progress though, I found myself in a long fight with a dangerous enemy, like this troll. Trolls are incredibly dangerous to fight and have to be dodged perfectly to avoid getting one-shot. This one happened to be pissed off at this stone building for some reason, which basically let me plink it to death with my bow and arrow. As you can see by the sheer number of arrows I'm sending downstream, this would be an incredibly hard fight if it was pursuing me. Eventually, I pin-cushioned it enough times to take it down, and was presented with one of the most disturbing sights I've ever seen.
There are no dumbbells in here, they're just my balls, baby.
Killing this thing gave me some troll hide and unlocked the troll armor set, which is basically an upgraded version of my current leather armor. I spent the rest of the day exploring the surrounding forest looking for tin ore, but alas, I had no success. With nightfall approaching fast, I decided to tuck back into this crypt with that ghost to show him my new Stagbreaker. It made quick work of this room that was basically inaccessible before, and I pulled 3 more Surtling cores from it. So tin ore was still at the top of my priority list, and while yesterday didn't really reveal where to explore, it did reveal where not to. On my travels through the Black Forest, I came across this troll cave, and curiosity got the better of me, so I peeked inside. As one would expect, there was a troll in there. But that's not always the case. I was hoping for a quick loot and scoot, but that obviously wasn't going to happen. Fighting this thing in close quarters sounded like a bad idea, so I bounced. Flash forwards a bit, and I finally managed to find some tin deposits along the shoreline. There were Grey Dwarf nests nearby, so I had to be very careful with how I proceeded. By that, I mean I got absolutely swarmed and spent the next 10 minutes fighting for my life. Just when I thought I was finally done and had made enough distance from the nest, a troll decided to join the party. This was obviously not ideal. I eventually got it down to a 1v1 for a brief time and was able to finish it off before a bunch more enemies showed up. Long story short, I come out on top, found some more tin ore, built a makeshift shelter to renew my rested buff, dug up some buried treasure, and ran home through the dark forest with loot in hand. I slapped that tin ore into the smelter and fell into a deep sleep on my completely solid wooden bed. The next morning I ran out to the smelter to pick up my tin bars off the ground, which unlocked a ton of new recipes. Most important were the bronze bar, cauldron, and mead kettle. I crafted my first ever bronze bar, which unlocked a whole new suite of tools, weapons, armor, and farming equipment. The very first thing I made was some bronze nails, and if you're wondering why, allow me to elaborate. You see, dear viewer, these nails are needed to make quite possibly the greatest thing ever introduced to any video game ever. The cart. You can attach this thing to your character's waist and take it with you to load up on resources. Hands down, it's one of my favorite things about Valheim, and I was looking forward to putting it to use almost immediately. I decided to make a bronze axe with some more of the metal I had smelted, which enabled me to finally cut down hardwood trees. These trees yielded fine wood, which unlocked a ton more recipes and was going to be an invaluable resource moving forwards. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I spent the entire rest of the day cutting down trees with my brand new axe and my adorable little cart. I had already outgrown my little starter base and was looking to expand within the next few days, so this was a necessary step in getting the resources I needed. I was going to need a lot of wood for what I had planned, and what better time to get the process rolling than now? I had quite a nice stack by the end of the day, and slept soundly knowing the progress had been made. On my solid wooden bed. Day 15 was exciting, as I knew that all that hard work from yesterday was about to pay off. I had found this little ring of stones on my previous travels, and thought it would be a great spot to build my new base. It's fairly close, has direct access to the meadows, black forest, and ocean, all while having these unique indestructible stones. The ground around them can still be terraformed, but the stones themselves aren't able to take any damage, making them a great spot to build a base on top of. Now, I had never built on top of stones like this before, and wasn't exactly sure what the best approach was, so I just winged it. I did my best to line things up evenly, and eventually had a square wooden platform on top of one of the rocks. I added some angled beams underneath to add some support for up top, and started slapping up the first row of walls in my new base. I decided to add this little deck in the front, which I could use to defend it if I came under siege. By the time nightfall rolled around, I had the foundation of things pretty much laid out. I added some extra support beams to the deck just to make sure things were secure, and plopped down a temporary bed to get some rest. The next morning, I was right back to it. The walls went up pretty easy, but the roof was a bit of a struggle with the lack of support. There was this one spot in particular that just didn't want to stay in place. I tried adding extra support along the sides of my house, but that didn't seem to work. Ultimately, I decided to install the support beam in the middle of the base coming from the rock that I built on top of, which seemed to do the trick. The best part about this rock is that it also counts as terrain, meaning I can place my campfire on top of it. I spent the rest of the day tearing apart my old base and hauling all of my resources to the new one using my new cart. I placed a kiln and smelter in my courtyard and made a much more expansive storage system that should help with the inventory struggles. The next morning, I added this row of small floor panels over the storage chests, that way I could expand it later if I needed to. I placed the forge next to my workbench and installed all of the bench upgrades I could on the shelf above them. I placed a cauldron for the first time, which unlocked the boar jerky and Queen's Jam food recipes that I was definitely going to be taking advantage of. I tried placing down 2 cooking stations next to the cauldron, but they didn't function quite right and I had to move them later on. That honey I've been farming was finally starting to come in handy with the boar jerky recipe. This was by far one of my best recipes I had, and honestly pretty cheap to make since it gives 2 jerky per craft. With my base in reasonably good shape now, I decided to head back into the Black Forest to mine some more metal. I needed a lot more bronze to make the mead kettle, fermenting barrels, bench upgrades, and of course, new tools and armor. Now I wasn't expecting to run into a troll first thing, and quite honestly, he caught me with my pants down. I was really struggling to unhook myself from this cart while battling with the camera clipping on all the vegetation. I managed to dodge his first swipe, and while I thought my timing was good on the second one... Oh my god. After this happened, I decided to look up online to see if there was an easier way to detach oneself from a cart, and it turns out that there is. This creator by the name of Emma Potato shares a bunch of useful tips on YouTube, but the one that interested me the most was this one.
Block while attached to the carts, and you dodge roll, you immediately get freed from the cart, so you don't need to find that E button again.
This tiny little tip ended up saving me countless times in the future, so thank you so much for sharing, Emma, and I hope your potatoes are plentiful. As for this current moment in time, things weren't looking so good. To say this was a setback in my plan is a vast understatement. I lost an antler pick, my bronze axe, my upgraded bow, stag breaker, a wooden shield, and a copper knife, and all of my leather armor. I was basically reset back to day 2 of this challenge. But luckily, I had some spare resources laying around so I could bounce back a little bit. I didn't have the resources to remake Stagbreaker yet, so I was just going to have to do without it. I did opt to splurge on making the fine wood bow instead of the crude bow though, thinking that the increased range DPS would probably offset some of the weapons I had just lost. Giant L aside though, the mission hadn't changed. I went back into the Black Forest to mine some more copper until another troll just stumbles into the scene.
Holy shit.
But wait, there's more! Act fast and you could fight a second troll!
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, no, I wasn't about to fight 2 trolls at the same time. I ran like a bitch all the way back to my base, squeezing my little butt cheeks the entire time, just hoping they didn't follow me. Luckily, they didn't. Despite the ever-looming danger of 2 trolls being just inside the wood's edge, I had to know if my cart survived from the events of yesterday. Fortunately, it did, but it was in a pretty rough shape and had to be repaired. Just when I was about to rescue it from its misty prison in the woods, I got swarmed by Grey Dwarves. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted one of those trolls leering in the background. I didn't see the other one anywhere, so I reasoned I should probably get the drop on this one now to separate them from each other and take them out individually. There were a few close calls, I'm not gonna lie. Whew. But ultimately I persevered and rescued my baby from being trapped under this log. I went back to mining copper for about 15 seconds and noticed the other troll was already fumbling its way over to me. Oh, god damn it! For the record, this troll fight alone took me 3 minutes and 19 seconds. It took me nearly 3.5 minutes to kill a single troll, so you can hopefully understand why progress has been slow. The only uplifting part of all this was these trolls ended up mining the rest of this copper node for me. It's actually a pretty viable way to mine copper early on, but extremely risky to pull off in hardcore. I found another copper deposit nearby and mined it for as long as I could before it got too dark. Day 19 was absolute chaos. As soon as I stepped outside of my door, the game sent me an unwanted notification.
The forest is moving.
What?
Oh god, I think I'm under attack. Fuck me, I'm so dead. Oh, I'm so dead.
The forest is moving?
Oh my god. What the f***? Oh my god.
This fight was brutal. I was in no way, shape, or form prepared to handle something like this, especially after just losing all of my skills and gear to that troll. I had no option but to try to weather the storm though, and after a long and tiring fight with dozens of Grey Dwarves, I somehow managed to come out on top.
Oh my god, did I do it? Jesus Christ.
With that out of the way, I opted to head back into the Black Forest to mine more copper. I feel like I've written the same thing in the script about 30 times now, but the problem is I keep constantly getting attacked and can't make any sense of progress. Perhaps this time will be different. Nope, of course not. In fact, let's throw in a shaman and a brute at the same time.
Oh, I'm fucking dead.
Hi, Manya.
Come on. God damn it.
What you do?
Oh. I felt utterly defeated from that last death. I had lost my full gear setup multiple times over and over again, and quite literally didn't even have a stone axe to my name. The worst part of all this, though, was I had just lost the third and final antler pickaxe that I had, meaning I was only left with 2 options. I could either refight Ichthyr to get more antlers, or I could try to rescue my cart full of copper and hope that I had harvested enough tin from before to make the bronze pickaxe. I went with option 2, reasoning that the bronze pick would be better to harvest with anyways and would probably save me time from having to refight a boss. The rest of this day was pretty boring. I spent it smelting copper, cooking food, and cutting down trees. I was able to recraft my fine wood bow and upgrade it to level 3 at least, but that hardly offset the giant L's I had been taking. I spent pretty much all of day 21 hunting. I had my sights set on remaking the Stagbreaker and all of that leather armor I had lost, all of which required leather scraps and deer hide, so there was just no way around this.
That's a lot of damage.
I did come across another village on my travels, so I set aside some time to tear it all apart for wood. It turns out that these wood piles yield 16 wood each if you dismantle them, which is like the equivalent of cutting down 3 trees.
Holy shit. Oh my god, where has this been all my life?
I had a pretty healthy stack of wood in the end, which I converted into wooden arrows so I could carry it all a bit easier. I kept hunting clear into the nighttime hours until I couldn't really see anything anymore, and I had to return to base. I made this little box on my ramp to store extra arrows in, and I got to work reconstructing the coveted Stagbreaker. As for the armor situation, I decided to go with the troll leather set, with the exception of the cape that I couldn't afford quite yet. Yep, day 21 was a good day. Day 22 was a terrible day. It didn't start out that way, of course. I made some nice new furniture and was having a blast feeling the power of Stagbreaker in my hands once again. Then a troll showed up.
Oh god, here we go.
I wasn't about to lose my gear again after only having it for less than 5 minutes, so I fought like my life depended on it, and I eventually whittled it down. I had to make a quick pit stop in the Black Forest for some core wood, which allowed me to finally make the bronze pickaxe. As long as I didn't die with this thing, I wouldn't have to fight Ichthir for any more antlers. I spent the rest of the day harvesting copper in the Black Forest until it got too dark to see, which is where things took a bit of a turn for the worst. Another troll showed up, because why the f not, and, well...
Oh my god, are you serious?
And just like that, I had lost all of my new armor, weapons, and the bronze pickaxe. Now, I had been banking my copper inside of the cart as I mined it, so I didn't lose that at least. But the problem was, I was out of tin, and I had no possible way to mine it now. The writing was on the wall. I knew I had to refight Ichthir. The next morning, I recrafted some pieces of troll armor and the fine wood bow, but could only manage to craft a wooden club as a melee weapon for now. I cooked up some more boar jerky and decided to make this Queen's Jam food as it was my best in slot stamina food for a while. This troll had to go, and I thought that I had learned the error of my ways from before. You see, I always attempted to dodge backwards when a troll swung their club, but then I started getting recommended videos pertaining to combat on Valheim, which changed my understanding. This one player in particular named Scales is basically the GOAT of Valheim movement and combat, and after watching through most of his absolutely ridiculous challenge videos, I noticed that he always tends to dodge into the troll instead of away from it. So I just had to channel my inner Scales, and I should have this in the bag.
Oh my god, are you serious?
Those mother bitches over there!
I don't want to talk about it.
My God, my God.
I don't want to talk about it.
As it turns out, I'm not as good as Scales. Okay, new plan. I wanted to see if a tier 3 wooden shield would be able to tank a single hit from a troll. I mean, now was the time to test it, considering I literally had nothing to lose. I did decide to make a copper knife because I knew I was going to need it later anyways, but I had a plan for not losing it if this tower shield didn't work out. I ticked off the troll and got it as low as possible with my bow and arrow before proceeding any further. I dropped my copper knife by this rock in the meadow, so if I did happen to die, I wouldn't lose it. Now, for the moment of truth.
Well, so much for that.
Yeah, I kind of expected that, to be honest, but it's still bullshit. I finished off the troll with a bow and teabagged the daylights out of him for his disrespect. I picked up my copper knife, remade some of the gear I had lost, and spent the rest of the night hunting again. Day 24 was all about cart rescue. I thought I was going to get the drop on this troll for some cheeky sneak damage, but then this Grey Dwarf ran up and slapped me, nearly getting me killed by a troll again. I came out on top and located my cart in the forest. Even though I had banked 15 copper ore inside, the writing was on the wall and I knew what I had to do. I remade some troll armor, grabbed the deer trophy, and fired up the Ichthir fight once again. It was easier the second time around, for sure, so I guess I should take solace in the fact that I was clearly becoming more powerful despite all of these setbacks. My ego was shattered, don't get me wrong, but everything happens for a reason. Killing him the second time gave me an extra trophy to work with, which I promptly mounted over the entrance to my house. A bit poetic, if you ask me. I recrafted the 3 antler pickaxes and subdivided them between my base, cart, and personal inventory. Day 25 was all about locating some more tin deposits. I scoured the shorelines for a good while until I eventually found some nodes in the south. Flash forwards through all the mining and constant Grey Dwarf attacks, and I ended up with a solid 26 ore. I went back to base to get it smelting up, and decided to experiment with these sharp stakes. I was curious if these things were effective against trolls at all, and there just so happened to be one in the wood's edge. Who am I kidding? There's always a fucking troll in the wood's edge, this was nothing new. It was tough to tell if the spikes actually did anything or not, but I did notice a separate set of white damage numbers pop up when he walked over top of it, which confirmed that they are quite effective. This was good to know, as the trolls were obviously not going anywhere, and if I could devise a trap that made killing them easier, I may end up saving a lot of resources and needless deaths in the future. I crafted some more troll armor and remade the Stagbreaker for the 3rd time. I had finally bounced back from all of my blunders, and I could keep making progress towards the Elder fight.
Hey, you there. Did you know that statistically speaking, there's a 0% chance that you're subscribed to this channel? You've watched more than 25 days of this idiot's adventure so far, and you still haven't subscribed? What are you waiting for? It's completely free and helps support him to make more content just like this. While you're at it, hit that like button and leave a comment down below letting him know what you think of the video so far. Both of these things count as video engagement and help the YouTube algorithm promote the video to new viewers. Anyways, back to the moron.
Day 26 was all about getting more ancient seeds to start the outer fight and gathering more copper. This Grey Dwarf nest was just not having it though. Every time I managed to get through a wave, another even tougher wave would spawn. The Stagbreaker is an amazing weapon, don't get me wrong, but it was really tough to capitalize on these small windows of opportunity when there were so many enemies attacking me. Eventually I got through it and secured the ancient seed. I managed to find another copper deposit deep into the forest and spent the remainder of the day here excavating it. It actually ended up being way bigger than I thought it was.
That's what she said.
So much so that I started to excavate around it thinking that I could drop the whole thing, but this plan ended up not working. The deposit was just way too large and actually extended beyond how far down I could dig. Now, of course I didn't have more than 30 seconds of peace while mining this thing, but I'm sure you already knew that. I would love to say that day 27 was different, but it was exactly the same. I spent the entire day mining more of this copper node, however I was smarter about it than I've been in the past. I made this little bunker nearby where I could repair and bank all of the copper in a chest as I accumulated it, so if I did happen to die, I wouldn't lose it all. After I had a healthy inventory of it, I returned to base to get it smelting up. As you can see from this very quick clip of me banking resources, I had finally accumulated the 3 ancient seeds I needed to fight the outer boss. Come morning time, I had accumulated a nice little supply of bronze bars. The first thing I did was craft a cultivator, which would let me start growing my own crops and replanting trees. Before I could do much else, I figured I should take care of this troll that I spotted by the base, so I banked all of my valuables and initiated the attack. Now either I was becoming better at fighting trolls, or they started spreading the word about a teabagging woodland creature wearing the hide of their kin. Either way, these fights were going a bit smoother than before, and I was okay with that. I wanted to remake the bronze axe so I could start harvesting fine wood again, but I was completely out of leather scraps, so I had to go hunting. Flash forwards a bit, and I finally had the tool back in my hands. Like my forefathers before me, I knew that deforestation was the only answer. I was finally able to recraft my fine wood bow and upgrade it all the way back to level 3 like before. Lastly, I wanted to get some exterior walls up in the event of another siege attack like before. These stake walls were actually fairly cheap, so I'm not entirely sure why I didn't do this sooner. They were a little finicky to place at times, so I had to adjust the terrain here and there, or tinker with snap points to get them in the right positions. I spent most of the next morning gathering more wood and tinkering with those aforementioned walls until I had them where I wanted them. Ultimately, I decided to place 2 entrance gates towards the front of my base and extend the walls from there. I probably should have started with this, but I digress. I spent a few minutes hoeing the ground to get things nice and even, and was pretty proud of my work so far. Next, I decided to clean up my beehive situation. Someone a whole lot smarter than me figured out how beehives function in Valheim and determined that propping them up on pillars like this is the best way to keep them happy. I built a small platform around them to make harvesting easier and added some stairs and walls to clean things up. I used my new cultivator to till all of the soil underneath so I could start planting my carrots, as a bunna would do. Next, I wanted to install an archer's tower in the event that I needed to defend my base, and I reasoned that this stone in the front was probably my best spot. The stairs were a bit janky, but it was functional. I couldn't really shoot anything underneath of me due to the angle, but I could take out enemies attacking my front gate if I had to. Lastly, I wanted to start adding these sharp spike walls around the outside perimeter for extra defense, but they were pretty expensive, so I didn't make it very far. So you're probably wondering why I'm tearing apart my precious wooden cart right now, and the answer is simple. I had an epiphany. If one were to simply take the necessary resources with them to build a cart, that would prevent one from having to haul said cart the whole way to the destination. Genius, if I do say so myself. Anyways, if you hadn't clued in yet, this was going to be another copper harvesting day. I mentioned this deposit was massive, but this is really one of the best clips I have to highlight it. Long story short, I spent the entire day here harvesting like before, only this time things took an interesting turn. Whoa.
God damn it! Oh, stupid poison.
Yup, I died again. But if you paid close attention, you would have noticed that I had the foresight to drop my bow and knife before I died. Just not my stag breaker and all of my armor. Look, I was under a lot of pressure, okay? The first thing in the morning, I ran back to where I died and picked up my bow and knife. Luckily, I had been banking all of that copper inside of this chest in the cart as I mined it, so I didn't really lose anything when I died. The hard part was getting this cart back to base safely, which was interesting.
What the What the
As soon as I dropped my cart inside the base, there was an unexpected turn of events.
Oh my god, are you serious? I mean, the timing.
Now, despite the unfortunate timing of my death the night before, I was at least prepared to handle this siege thanks to my new base defenses. The walls were holding up great, and those spikes I installed were doing a lot of heavy lifting killing all these Grey Dwarves. I spent most of this raid shooting from my tower or on top of the beehives, but towards the end, I went straight ninja on those asses! Now don't get me wrong, this siege absolutely wrecked those spikes I installed, but it was worth every log. I spent the rest of the day hunting, cutting down some more core wood, and decided to install a second smelter to speed up copper production. Lastly, I decided to start installing this makeshift troll trap up the hill from my base, thinking that I could lure them into it if I was in a pinch. I got to test it out the next morning, and I was pretty excited to see that it was actually working.
Oh yeah, baby.
The downside was none of these traps could survive a single hit from a troll, so if they got hit, which they did, the whole thing was worthless. It managed to kill one troll though, so at least it wasn't a complete waste of time. The rest of the day's events are a bit scatterbrained, so bear with me.
Oh, my carrots. Oh.
Look, bunnas get excited over carrots. I can't help it, it's just my nature. I finally recrafted the stag breaker and my troll armor for like the 5th time, and started investigating my newly unlocked food recipes. Now I didn't have many carrots to go around yet, but I decided to burn through a few to make a carrot soup, a deer stew, and a minced meat stew. I made these foods strictly for whenever I got around to fighting the Elder Boss, as they were the best foods I was going to have available. I replanted some of my carrots for more seeds, and spent the rest of the day mining tin ore along the shoreline. Another troll attacked me, but I pumped it full of arrows and rammed my head into its crotch to assert my dominance.
Again and again and again.
On my way back to base, I got attacked by another troll. Story of my life, I know. I tried using what remained of my trap, but it got demolished pretty quickly, and I had to shoot it down like normal. The good news was I could finally remake my troll leather hood and deer hide cape, and most of the metal I had gathered had finished smelting. I refined all of that copper and tin into bronze, and was finally able to craft a mead kettle, anvils, and adze bench upgrades. Come morning time, I had enough bronze to craft the forge cooler, which meant that I was finally caught up with all of the upgrades available to me. I used the new mead kettle to craft a minor healing mead base, and slapped it into a fermenting barrel to get it brewing up. I spent most of day 33 harvesting trees in the Black Forest so I could rebuild my base defenses. As you all witnessed a few days back, those spike walls worked out great, but they were pretty much all destroyed during that siege. I experimented for a bit, trying to find a way to place these spikes in such a way that I could repair them from the inside, but alas, my Valheim building knowledge was limited. I'm sure that someone found a way to do it, but not this bunna. I just stuck with the tried and true method that I used last time, and in case you're wondering, yes, it took literally all day. Since the entire day was already gone, I figured, you know what? I'm gonna send it with a stupid late night idea. I wanted to dig a hole. But not just any hole, a hole for trolls. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the troll hole.
You gotta pay the troll toll if you want to get into that boy's hole.
It didn't take long before I had my first customer.
Oh, look at that, perfect.
Now you're probably all wondering, but Bunna, what exactly is a troll hole? Well, allow me to explain how it works. First, you need to dig a big pit like I've done here. Then at the bottom of the pit, you have to scatter a bunch of ashes. Finally, at the top of the pit, near the very, very edge, you need to dump over a can of peas. Now, if you've done all of that correctly, when the troll comes along to take a pee, you kick him in the ash hole.
Boom!
Oh, jokes aside though, I was hoping the trolls would be dumb enough to just walk straight into here and get stuck, but obviously I was mistaken. It didn't work at all as I intended it to, but it did give me something to kite around, so it wasn't entirely worthless. I did slightly redesign it afterwards with some sloped roofs and a tiny walkway, but I'd other things planned today that kept me from testing it. I wanted to complete a few more burial chambers for some more surtling cores, treasure, and bone fragments. The first crypt that I found went really well. Stagbreaker was putting in work, and I was even able to cheese a fight with some rancid remains. I found a healthy supply of the resources I was looking for, but since it was late and there was another crypt nearby, I figured I might as well wipe it out too. That was a mistake. For the most part, everything went extremely well. I was cautious with how I was clearing things, and always checked rooms behind me to make sure I wasn't going to get pinched. But somehow, I must have overlooked one. Oh. Come on, go! Come on, what? So let's slow some things down here and take a better look at what happened. A skeleton somehow managed to make its way behind me and instantly fully staggered me with a single hit. I double roll dodged the next 2 attacks, but somehow the second one hit. Then, as I'm running away, I'm constantly spamming my number 4 key to switch to my copper knife to boost my movement speed. However, as you can see, my character never actually switched weapons. Then, for some reason, all of my stamina is just gone. He can't make it up the slope, and I get shot by an arrow. Bullshit. I started making some sad boar jerky first thing in the morning because I was sad, but I wasn't allowed to experience these emotions for very long.
Oh, come on. Are you serious? It's every time I die. Oh my god. I have no arrows.
I spent the entire morning running around repairing my base as it was being damaged and fighting off the horde where I could. The timing of this siege couldn't have been much worse, but at least I finished strengthening my base defenses a few days ago. The spike walls once again came in clutch, and because I had more of them placed along my perimeter, there wasn't nearly as many to replace like last time. I replanted my carrots, cooked some food, hunted some deer, cut some trees, and claimed my first batch of minor healing meats. If only I had these things yesterday, I wouldn't be standing here naked right now. I brewed up a new batch of tasty meat and got it fermenting, and replaced my fine wood bow and troll armor. Speaking of trolls, it was time to test out the new and improved troll hole.
You want the baby boy's hole, you gotta pay the troll toll.
Just like last time, it definitely didn't work. The only upside to this one was that I could run from one side to the next, and he still had to walk around the perimeter. I took him down the old-fashioned way, planted a bunch of fine wood trees using the cultivator, and recrafted the stag breaker for like the 5th time. I was feeling pretty bougie from all of my recent successes, so I started looking at new weapons to splurge on. I had seen Scales use at-gears to absolutely decimate things in close combat, so I figured I would give it a try. After all, we basically have the same level of skill. With the new polearm in hand, I returned to the burial crypt I died in for revenge. I discovered where things went wrong last time when I came across this hallway that I didn't see before. This was where that other skeleton came from, and I wasn't about to let that happen again. The final loot room here was pretty lucrative, so definitely worth the trip back. This at-gear was pretty strong, even against skeletons, but the Stagbreaker still stole the show with its cheese ability. I found a bunch more Surtling cores in a different chamber, and about had a heart attack when this ghost appeared out of nowhere. Like I said before, I don't f*** with no ghosts. I finished looting the crypt and stepped outside to spot a troll in the distance. I still needed more troll hide for the hood and cape, so I figured why not. This was my moment. I've been training for this. I've been watching and learning from Scales, the goat of Valheim movement and combat, and we're basically on the same level of skill. There was no reason I couldn't pull this off.
Alrighty then.
Alright, so in my defense, I was fully expecting this at-gear attack to stagger him. It always did for Scales, yet mine didn't even f***ing hit. When nothing happened, I somewhat panicked and completely forgot about my training. Instead of dodging into the troll like I wanted to, I still dodged away from it like always, and, well, you saw what happened.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So I won't lie, I took a break from Valheim for a bit, but deep down, I knew that all was not lost. Most of my bronze had went to base upgrades, so really all that was lost was my armor and weapons. I knew I could bounce back, I just had to stick to the grind. That copper deposit I'd been mining was nearly depleted, but there was still a large chunk floating in the air that I just couldn't figure out how to drop. I thought that maybe the trees were preventing it, but that wasn't it. It turns out that there was a small piece still buried underground, and when I mined it, all of it came crumbling down.
Oh, there we go.
I made it home safely with the haul, and by that time my tasty meat was done fermenting. Just like those higher-end foods that I had cooked, I planned on strictly using these for the outer boss fight. I threw another batch of minor healing meads into brew, and by that time the day was gone. The next morning, I was on a mission. I wanted to push that outer boss fight by day 40. In order to make that happen, I needed my troll armor back. I did manage to find one first thing in the morning, but I spent the rest of the day running around in the forest looking for more. I did manage to find some more copper deposits to mark before eventually returning to base to craft what I could. I remade my tunic and deerhide cape and settled for a leather helmet for the time being. Come nighttime, I managed to find another troll by the wood's edge, but as you can see, I found a lot of other badness as well. This troll hole was glorious, though. One might even say it was a troll glory hole.
Troll toe. What'd you say?
It wasn't perfect by any means, but it did help me kite all of the stuff around. I was so close to being able to fight the outer boss that I didn't take any chances here. I didn't try to melee things or pull off any Scales-esque movement, I just stuck to what I knew and even popped a healing potion at one point to ensure I came out on top. And you know what? It worked. It wasn't Scales' method, but it was Bunna's method. And that's just fine. We're like the same skill level. If I was going to tackle the outer boss on day 40, I had to act now. The boss fight location wasn't terribly close, and I had to cross a small patch of ocean to get there. This meant that I had to set sail pretty early on in the day if I wanted to establish a small base of ops and prepare myself for what was to come. I was finally able to recraft the troll leather hood, and I had all of the resources for the stag breaker minus the core wood that I could get along the way. I attempted to recraft it halfway there, but then realized that it requires a workbench of level 2. The one bench upgrade was pretty cheap and only required 10 flint to make, but I would have to wait until I reached the next shoreline to gather it. Speaking of which, it was time to set sail for the first time. The raft was nothing special, but the wind was in my favor and it got the job done. Luckily, I didn't get attacked by any sea monsters along the way, as that would have been just my luck. I landed on shore and spent a few minutes collecting flint so I could finally recraft the stag breaker for like the 6th f***ing time. Oddly enough, there was a merchant located near the outer boss, and I can't tell you just how fortunate this ended up being for me. I gave Halstein a firm pet and perused the merchant's inventory. The most notable thing to purchase here is the Megan Jord belt. Megan Jord? I don't know how to say it. But honestly, with as often as I was dying, I felt like this would have been a poor investment. The fishing pole, on the other hand, just might end up in my hands one day. It was already getting late at this point, so I constructed a small bunker to take refuge in for the night and prayed that tomorrow's fight was going to go as planned. Day 40 was here, and I was understandably pretty nervous. I felt like I had came as prepared as I possibly could have, though, minus all of the setbacks from dying. I brought the highest tier bow available and boatloads of arrows to throw down range. I had minor healing potions and stamina meads to maintain some steady DPS. I even remembered to bring a bukeberry so that I could expel my stomach of my current food in favor of the higher tier stuff that I made. At this point, there was really nothing left to do but to just do it. But before I could start this fight, I had to take out this nearby Grey Dwarf nest. I was pretty happy about my decision to remake Stagbreaker before coming here. It still took a couple minutes to get through it all though, and just as I finished there was another surprise waiting for me. Just ignore the corgi barks in the background.
Oh, you've gotta be shitting me, dude.
Fortunately, these pillars made kiting this thing a lot easier, but obviously not as good as the troll hole. I had already went through about half of my rested buff by this point, so I had no choice but to return to my bunker to rest up. It was a really good thing that I did, because the game was about to throw another curveball at me.
Oh, you've gotta be kidding.
Now normally this would have been a huge problem, but it just so happens that I was right next to the trader when the siege started. For those of you unaware, the trader is a completely safe area that enemies can't get into, so I was basically just able to sit out the entire attack in the comfort of a bubble. Thank you, Haldor! Anyways, about half of the day was gone now with all of the delays, and if I was going to take down the outer before nightfall, I had to start now. There was nothing left to it but to do it, so I clenched my butt cheeks and slapped the ancient seeds on the altar to get things rolling.
Whoa! Woo! Come on. Stamina, please. Yes! Oh. That's what I'm talking about, baby.
And just like that, I had succeeded at taking down the Elder. For the record, that fight took well over 10 minutes to complete. And despite almost failing right out the gate when those roots clobbered me around, I was able to pull it together and only took one more hit for the rest of the fight. Oh man, that was awesome! What? What's so funny?
You had to refight the deer!
That's what you're focusing on? Not the fact that I just took down the Elder?
No one's ever had to refight the deer before!
Okay, that can't be true.
Oh my, how many pickaxes did you lose?
It was 3.
3!
Alright, I get it. I suck at this game, but like, at least give me some credit for the Elder
My
fight.
sides hurt! Oh, my sides hurt!
Okay, I'm leaving.
Okay, alright, wait. You're right. Nice work with taking down the Elder. But the bone mass is a far superior foe. Journey now to the swamp to continue your challenge.
Dude, it's already day 40. Am I even gonna have time to tackle the swamp?
At the rate you're going, probably not. But you better damn well try.
Alright, let's keep it rolling. So with the Elder defeated and the wind in my favor, I decided to set sail on the open waters. The trip back didn't seem to take nearly as long as the trip there, which almost always seems to be the case. Once I got back to base, I gently placed that swamp key in a storage box for safekeeping, and did a few of the normal base maintenance things like harvesting honey and replanting my carrots. I offered the Elder Trophy at the Sacrificial Stones, and had a new ancient power to take advantage of. This one gives faster woodcutting, which in the early game is pretty darn helpful. I returned to base for a brief moment to reward myself with yet another Bronzat gear. I deserved this. I earned this. I spent what little time was left in the day hunting, gathering raspberries, and tearing down wooden structures. I was still gathering berries come morning time, but I was basically at the tail end of the loop at this point. I decided to pick up that Elder buff on my way back to base, as I had plans for it in the coming days. Before getting wrapped up in too much else, I reasoned that I should get some poison resistance potions brewing up for when I tackle the swamp. I needed some more bronze to make another fermenting barrel and to craft a carve that would make sailing less of a pain. You guys know how this goes at this point, so I'll spare you the details. I returned to base in the morning with a healthy supply of copper and got it smelting up. I cooked up a breakfast of deer stew and crafted all 80 bronze nails I was going to need for that carve. I was still short on fine wood though, which is where that Elder buff came in handy. Popping this thing let me tear through all these fine wood trees that I planted before, and by the time I was finished, I had more than enough wood to go around.
That's what she said.
I had just enough bronze left to craft another fermenting barrel and prepped another batch of poison resistance meads to slap inside of it. Okay, finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. The carve! This bad boy was much faster and had a lot more health than a normal raft, both of which were pretty important for exploring the ocean. Best of all, it had a built-in inventory. 4 slots doesn't sound like much, but it would be perfect for keeping the swamp key safe inside. As fate would have it, my first batch of poison resistance meads were done brewing at this time, which meant that I could set sail for the swamp whenever I wanted to. But before I could set sail for the swamp, there was something that I just had to try. You're probably wondering why I'm completely naked boxing a skeleton right now, and the simple answer is, I was psyching myself up. You see, the countless amount of deaths that I had suffered from failing to properly dodge a single troll attack were really playing on my psyche. I convinced myself that before I could set sail for the swamp, I had to dodge at least one attack successfully. I journeyed back to a troll cave that I found in the Black Forest, and lo and behold, there stood my aggressor. Take a good look at these stats on screen, because there's a good chance they're about to be 0. Originally, I was waiting for all of my food buffs to run out, that way I could get the really authentic Scales experience, but then the troll spotted me and the game was on. In total, I dodged 5 attacks from this troll in close quarters, not including his ranged boulder throw, and managed to fist the shit out of him while I was at it. I mean, if that doesn't prove that I'm on the same skill level as Scales, or even slightly higher, then I don't know what would. Regardless, I was happy enough with my performance and can move on to brighter shores. Or in the swamp's case, significantly darker ones.
Alright, I'm setting sail. The wind is not in my favor.
When I got about 100 feet from shore, something unexpected happened, though.
A foul smell from the swamp? Oh my god, is my base about to be raided? They're coming after me.
What is?
Pretty sure I just got sieged, but I went in the water, so I don't think they can get me. Get fucked.
Until they can get you.
They'll never get me.
What if they can?
Don't even worry about it, I'm invincible.
I would come to find out later that leaving that siege unattended would have consequences, but for right now, I was just enjoying my ocean voyage. The wind was hardly ever in my favor while sailing, so this was about the speed I was always traveling at. I managed to find a leviathan when I was out in the ocean, and took the time to mine some of its barnacles before it sunk, ending up with 11 pieces of chitin in the end. The wind was finally picking up, and despite my fear of tipping this carve over, I set full sail towards the north. As nighttime approached and the fog started picking up, I had to steel myself against the harsh ocean and darkness I was sailing into. Most men would have ran home crying to their mummies, but I'm a seasoned, grizzled Viking that was built for exploration.
This is f***ing terrifying.
Oh god. Why is it so foggy?
It got dark.
Where's land?
I don't know. Send help.
It was at this time that I realized my first of many mistakes.
I didn't grab poison resistance, did I? God damn it.
Why? What happened?
No, don't worry about it.
My long voyage paid off, though, as I stumbled across my first ever swamp biome just before the new day. My carve immediately came under attack from a bunch of leeches, and trying to land any shots on them was darn near impossible. Unfortunately, my ship crash-landed onto a patch of dirt that I wasn't expecting to hit, and while the leeches weren't much of an issue, the 2 blobs coming my way were. If I had remembered that poison resistance, I could have held my ground here and killed everything. But alas, I was an idiot and forgot them. The only real option was to abandon my ship and attempt to kite all of this stuff on land, while hopefully avoiding the aggro of anything else.
Oh, that's already an abomination. Jesus Christ.
So things were fine. Everything was fine. I was fine. I'm just kidding. It was the opposite of fine. In fact, one would say it wasn't fine.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Welcome to the swamp. Jesus Christ!
As you may have gleaned from that clip, I wasn't exactly angry about dying. It was 100% my fault for forgetting those potions and acting as hastily as I did. I deserved it. What I didn't deserve was the fact that the swamp siege was still underway, and now I had a horde of Draugr to deal with at my front door. I was able to stand my ground long enough for the siege to end, but I was still left with all of the remaining mobs to deal with. As long as I kept them from breaking through my walls, I should be good. They just broke through the walls.
Well, shit.
So with no real weapon to defend myself with, I opted to run like a bitch. I needed core wood to recraft Stagbreaker and my finewood bow, so I figured my best bet was to go get some and hopefully have the resources to kill all this stuff. But that plan didn't work. I went back for round 2, and that didn't work either. But you know, third time is the charm, and by the time I finished gathering what I needed, the siege was actually all wrapped up anyways. I repaired all of my walls, recrafted my weapons and armor, including the Stagbreaker for the 7th time, and was definitely ready to crash for the night. Oh, what a day. I woke up the next morning refreshed and ready to get back to it. Like I said, I wasn't mad about dying necessarily, but I was getting fed up with repeating the same exact gameplay loop over and over. Just like I'm sure you guys are sick of watching it. I basically spent the next 5 days just harvesting resources, recrafting my gear, and preparing to return to the swamp. To break things up, let's montage it.
Who's to know if your soul will fade at all? The one you sold to fool the world. You lost your self-esteem along the way. Yeah. Good God, you're coming up with reasons. Good God, you're dragging it out. Good God, it's the changing of the seasons. It feels so raped. So follow me down and just fake it if you're out of direction. Fake it if you don't belong. Yeah, fake it if you feel like affection. Whoa, you're such a fucking hypocrite. You used to know that the lies won't hide your flaws. No sense in hiding all of yours. You gave up on your dreams along the way. Yeah. Good God, you're coming up with reasons. Good God, you're dragging it out. the changing of the seasons. I feel so raped. So follow me down and just.
Oh, fuck. No, let's not do that. Oh, don't see me. Please don't see me. Can I sneak?
Down and just fake it if you're out of direction. Fake it if you don't belong here. Fake it if you feel like affection. Whoa, you're such a fucking hypocrite.
So after 5 straight days of grinding, I had not only fully rebuilt, but came back stronger than before. I remade my bow, I remade my act gear, I remade my stag breaker, and I crafted a full set of bronze armor. On top of all that, I was currently crafting up the best food that I had available to me in the form of minced meat sauce, deer stew, and carrot soup. I wasn't about to forget those poison resistance potions again, so I grabbed them now and hopped into my car for the long journey to the swamp. Luckily, the wind was in my favor, so I was able to gain some pretty high speeds on my voyage.
Ludicrous speed! Go!
I managed to get my boat stuck on a sandbar when I got there, but luckily it was part of the Black Forest and not the swamp. Otherwise, this could have been bad. I was still close enough for leeches to attack though, so I fended them off with Stag Breaker and was able to loot my first ever blood bag. I had to use a hoe to get my boat unstuck, and by that time morning was already upon me. In the morning I sailed over to this little piece of heaven near the edge of the swamp and was immediately greeted by the neighbors. I wasn't sure how hard a 1-star Draugr was going to hit, so I didn't take any chances. I decided to establish a little base of ops here, but I had to put it up on stilts to keep it out of the water. For the life of me, I could not seem to get the rested buff while inside of it though. I tried moving the fire, putting a roof on it, boxing myself inside, yet nothing seemed to work. I decided to relog to see if it was a bug, and well...
It was a bug. Are you f***ing serious?
That whole rested buff fiasco took like 10 minutes, and I lost my poison resistance with that relog, so I was pretty ticked. Fortunately, things were looking up for me. I had a nice little base of ops, and I'd already spotted 2 dungeons to tackle once I got my swamp key back. The only problem was, it was already getting nighttime and I didn't even have a bed in my base yet. Wood is always a struggle in the swamp, which is why I was tearing apart this structure for it, but all of the noise attracted a lot of unwanted attention. Now let it be known that I was putting up a fight, but when I saw a Draugr elite approaching, I knew that I had to bail for a second. I hopped in the Carve and set it to full throttle to get me out of there.
Woo! Oh, what a getaway.
NPCs refused to break in Valheim, so I still had a fight on my hands, but I was able to take it at my own pace. In the morning, I sailed back to base, snagged the rested buff, and walked out my door to meet more of the neighbors. Now, this situation was bad, okay? The biggest threat here was obviously the 1-star Draugr, but the other mobs were just as dangerous because they were getting in the way and making movements sporadic. I tried to remain calm and took my time with dodges and counterattacks, but ultimately...
Oh my god, are you serious? My boat! My boat!
Oh no! Why not?
So just to quickly recap, I didn't dodge this skeleton's attack because he was so far away that I knew he would miss, but the Draugr behind him pushed him forwards rapidly, which caused him to hit me. Because of this, I decided to pop a potion, which locked me inside of an animation, which prevented me from dodging this attack, which did 91 points of damage through block and full bronze armor.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Good God, you're coming up with reasons. Good God, you're dragging it out.
And just like that, I was back in the game. I still needed to craft my bronze act gear, but I was all out of tin, so I decided to sail back across the ocean to pick up the 17 I had stored over there. I harvested a few more while I was at it and returned home. That was the entire day. I had the act gear back in my hands by morning and was almost ready to tackle the swamp. First, I had to mass harvest some wood for a plan that I had in mind. I wasn't about to make all of the same mistakes again and wanted a better base of ops once I got there. Like always, the journey back took forever, even with my ludicrous speed mod.
Ludicrous speed! Go!
Part of my effort of not making the same mistakes was to grab the rested buff before I went back to the swamp. That way my stamina wasn't going to be a problem. It was already night by the time I reached my little hut, and while it looked safe from a distance, it just so happens that there was a wraith circling overhead that I didn't see. Luckily, I got out of my ship in time and was able to play Ring Around the Rosie to avoid him. I even lit him on fire at one point with my campfire, but the entertainment was pretty short-lived as more mobs showed up. Ultimately, I decided to take refuge in my hut, hoping that it would withstand the attacks at least until morning when the wraith would go away. I tried using the Stag Breaker to DPS things down, but it was making me pretty nervous with how much damage it was dealing. Oddly enough, the 1-star Draugr's head ended up glitching through my floorboards, and I was able to DPS it down with arrows. Then I was able to take the other one out by shooting it from my doorway. By that time it was already getting morning and the wraith had vanished, as verified by my janky camera peeks. Those assholes did break my ship apart though, so I had to rebuild it and pick up the dropped inventory from the ocean. Today's goal was strictly to improve my little base of ops, starting with hoeing the ground. I wanted to flatten things out and give me a better area to kite and defend myself. Next I wanted to build a treehouse. These large trees in the swamp count as fully indestructible objects, kind of like those rocks that I built on top of back in the meadows. Snazzy Games featured this pretty unique way of building a ladder in a small space, so I figured I'd give it a try. I'm not sure if he's the original designer of this, but it's straight up genius for conserving space. The only downside is you have to sprint jump up it to ascend, which uses a lot of stamina and can be dangerous if you're being pursued. Either way, it worked out great, and I'm really happy you shared this. Thank you so much, Snazzy Games. It was already getting dark out by the time I finished all this, but I was really happy with my progress. I had a nice secure new treehouse, complete with storage, a bed, a workbench, and a forge for repairing things. Before it got too dark, I decided to tear out my old hut and replace it with this little fortification of walls. I figured it might be a good idea to have something to kite around, but I could always hide inside of it and spam Stagbreaker if I needed to. It's no troll hole, but it's a Draugr flogger?
Wait a minute.
I heard something stirring outside of my base in the morning, so I opened up my door to investigate. There was a 1-star Draugr archer below my base, so I figured I should probably take it out before something bad happens.
Oh my god.
And just like that, I had lost a lot of progress. To quickly recap what was going on through my head here, I just witnessed this archer shoot my spike walls. I thought he was still looking at the walls, and I was safe to peek for a shot. But as fate would have it, he was looking directly at me, and a single arrow was enough to kill me. What happened after this was a bit stupid, but I have no regrets. Since I had already died and lost everything, including all of my stats, I decided to attempt to kill this 1-star Draugr with nothing but a wooden club. If I pulled it off, I had one less archer to deal with later. If I died, oh well. As it turns out, I was actually able to pull it off. I fought this thing for 3.5 minutes straight, never getting hit a single time. I was finally channeling my inner scales. I mean, after all, we are on the same level of skill, I've just been holding back this entire time. But all jokes aside, this was a motivational boost for me. I felt somewhat vindicated even after I had just lost everything. I proved to myself that I could dial in my dodges if I needed to, I just needed more practice. Since I still had nothing left to lose, I decided to go for a quick run around the swamp to map things out. This went as expected, but I did chart some interesting spots before I died. Anyways, I didn't want to procrastinate the inevitable anymore, so it was time to sail back to base to re-gear. I happened to spot that abomination just wrecking my old boat as I was sailing away, and I reasoned that I should probably go loot my pick and swamp key. As soon as it walked away from the shoreline, I sailed in to loot the boxes and immediately banked the pick and key in my new boat for safekeeping. The ride home was nothing new, outside of this one moment that had me a bit worried.
Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh, bad timing. Oh my god! Please sail faster.
Fortunately, I was able to outpace it and make it home safely. Oddly enough, I had found this single piece of scrap iron from somewhere in the swamp and decided to chuck it into the smelter to see what it unlocked. Honestly, this was another motivational boost that I really needed to keep me going. Watching all of that new armor, weapons, and building recipes flashing across my screen was a rush of dopamine that inspired me to keep on. Despite the countless deaths I had accrued, there was no doubt that I was making progress, and this was the proof. With the new dawn's light, I went running into the Black Forest on a mission. A stupid mission, but a mission nonetheless. Instead of trying to fist a troll in the ass like before, I was going to attempt to kill it with nothing but a flint spear.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Just like that Draugr fight back in the swamp, I reasoned that I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. If I managed to pull off killing this 1-star troll, it would give me 10 troll hide, which was enough for 2 pieces of my gear back. Plus, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. Now, I put up a heck of a fight on my first attempt, but I did end up dying when I failed to dodge an attack. No big deal, right? Wrong. As it turns out, I forgot to bind myself back at base, which means I spawned in the swamp again.
Oh, you've gotta be shitting me.
No big deal, right? Wrong. As it turns out, I didn't have any wood or stone inside of this base, which means I couldn't make a build hammer, which means I had no way of removing the bed, which means I had no way of spawning back at my old house. This meant that I had no choice but to run around the swamp attempting to get wood and stone, resulting in me dying 3 times. Once I finally pulled it off and disassembled my bed, I got a warning message that said the ground is shaking.
The groundish? Oh my god.
This meant that my base was about to be raided by trolls. I did my best to kite them into other mobs around the swamp, which actually worked for once. I died, respawned back at my normal base, crafted a new flint spear, and went back to the troll for round 2. I died, so I ran it back. Attempt number 3 was what I had been looking for. I was able to successfully dodge and counter this troll's attacks for minutes on end without taking a single blow, proving to myself that I am capable of pulling something like this off. I am capable of tackling hardcore challenges. I am on the same level as Scales, if not even slightly better.
That's what I'm talking about, baby. Get f***ed.
I entered that cave a boy, but I left a man. I felt so confident in myself that I even did it a second time with a different troll. I mean, who needs a troll hole when you have a troll pole?
Here's your toll, troll.
I used all of that troll hide to recraft my armor and weapons for the... I lost count. I spent the rest of the day and night cutting down trees so I could mass produce arrows for tomorrow's adventures. Day 60 was honestly like a new beginning for me. I was setting sail with the foreknowledge that I had a little base of ops waiting. I had retrieved all of my lost ships, and most importantly, I had recovered the swamp key. I was feeling more confident than ever in my ability to survive after taking down all those trolls, and I was ready to get back into the fray. It took pretty much the entire day to sail back to the swamp. I made sure to stop at my little campsite so I could renew my rested buff and replace my food with better quality before going any further. It was dark by the time I reached my treehouse, but that just meant that I would have a full day of dungeon excursions to look forward to. There was one troll left over from that raid still running around in the swamp causing chaos, so I figured I should probably take him out before something bad happens. Once he was gone, I sprinted over to the closest dungeon entrance and unlocked the gate, reasoning that even if I did die now, I at least had one dungeon unlocked. I placed a workbench and storage box outside of it that would be my makeshift bank for important stuff, including the swamp key. Without any further ado, it was time to tackle my first sunken crypt. As soon as I loaded in, I placed down a campfire so I could rest when I needed to, but the moment I saw a blob, I bailed. I didn't even have my poison resistance running yet, and I'm almost certain that if I had stayed even a second longer, I probably would have died. To say that I approached this dungeon with caution is an understatement. My tactic was to mine a little bit of these muddy scrap piles before switching to my stag breaker to DPS everything in the next room. When I did finally break through a section, I would use corners to line of sight frequently, and try to peek my camera through the cracks to see if anything was inside. I would even place down cooking stations in some of the tighter hallways, that way if something came running at me while I was in mid-swing, it would stop them. Granted, I don't think that this particular one would have done anything, but the effort was there. On top of all this, I banked my resources outside frequently, that way if I did happen to die, it wouldn't have been for nothing. I used stairs to my advantage and broke out the bow when I felt uncomfortable with pushing. I basically cheesed the living f*** out of this dungeon, and it was paying off in a huge way. When all of my stuff was nearing its breaking point, I peeked outside to see if I could go repair. It was nighttime though, and I didn't want to risk getting caught by a wraith, so I just camped out in the crypt for the rest of the night. Day 62 was a stark contrast in progress compared to the previous day. To make a long story short, I needed to repair my stag breaker before I could safely complete any more of the dungeon, but in order to do that, I had to have a workbench of level 2. The cheapest upgrade I could make was the chopping block, which required 10 pieces of flint. Do you think that I could find 10 pieces of flint before nightfall? The answer is no. I found 7. It took me an entire day to find 7 pieces of flint. The only other notable thing that happened was I placed down some overhead storage in the treehouse. That's it. That was day 62. The next morning was just as bullshit. I spent about half of the day sailing around looking for a shoreline of a meadows biome so I could loot 3 more flint to make that chopping block. The mission was eventually successful, and I was able to fully repair everything. As I was walking back to the sunken crypt, this happened.
Oh,
Initially, I tried to take it down with fire arrows, but once I realized how tanky this thing was, I decided it wasn't worth the risk.
I don't want it.
Just like last time inside the crypt, things went great. I was taking my time with every encounter and ensuring that I didn't overextend myself. The loot was slowly starting to pile up, but my pick was about to break and it was dark out, so I decided that I probably should head back to base and sleep. On the way back, I spotted this 2-star leech that I thought would be great for loot, but upon trying to kill it, this happened.
oh my god. My heart.
I was basically shitting my pants. It was at this moment that I decided to try banking all of my stuff inside of the dungeon so I could run back to base and return with wood to build a workbench. I still wouldn't be able to repair my stag breaker on the fly, but my pickaxe was the thing holding me back the most. I walked outside to find my storage box destroyed, so naturally I ran over all the loot to pick it up, not thinking that my swamp key was still inside of that box. I was now naked, in the swamp, at night, with the swamp key. After a few seconds of contemplating my life decisions, I ran back into the crypts to spend the night. In the morning my plan was a go, but that abomination was still lingering around, so I had to be careful when I come out to repair. For a brief moment, I thought I was a genius. I knew that a lot of players used campfires to quickly kill things before, so I figured why not try it on this? The reason is the rain. The campfire idea was a complete fail. Moving on. I had no choice but to risk it for the biscuit, and it panned out in my favor. I was fully repaired and back to mining in no time. As fate would have it, this crypt actually had a boss locator stone, but I wouldn't exactly consider myself lucky.
Oh, yes. Holy shit.
The loot was really starting to pile up at this point, which was great, but it was becoming really cumbersome to juggle it between boxes. I decided that I had to toughen up and try running some of this back to the treehouse, despite how scary that abomination was. I won't lie, things got a little bit hairy for a few minutes.
Oh. God, I hope he can't reach me. Oh. Oh. Off, please.
This thing was really persistent and my arrows barely scratched it, to the point that it wasn't even worth wasting my ammo. After a while, it eventually left me alone, and I was able to repair all of the damages. All of those numbers you saw scrolling was my sweet-ass vertical ladder meeting its demise. I just replaced it with regular stairs at the time and hit the sack. In the morning, I did my best to scope my surroundings from my treehouse. While I didn't see any sign of the abomination around me, it didn't go anywhere. But that's okay. It was out there, and I was in here, doing hammer stuff. Juggling all of the iron was becoming a bit of a problem, though. This sunken crypt was massive, and my carry weight was pretty low, meaning I had to make frequent small trips back to the entrance just to consolidate. I got lost inside of these tunnels pretty frequently, and at one point even all of the chests inside the crypt were overflowing to the point that I had to start making trips back to the treehouse. This would have been fine if it wasn't for this goddamn abomination constantly hanging out between the crypt and my base. Oh yeah, and it kept destroying my boat every single time it came across it, which was really frustrating. In retrospect, I probably should have just tried killing this thing like I did with those trolls a few days back, but I was trying to make progress and didn't want to slow things down. Anyways, I spent the rest of the day clearing out the rest of this crypt and playing hide-and-go-seek with the abomination. Come morning time, it was rinse and repeat. Run to the crypt, load up my inventory, hide-and-go-seek, repeat. By midday, I had finally brought everything back to the treehouse and was ready to pack up the boat to sail home. Even this process was dangerous and time-consuming. I could only carry so much scrap iron at any given time, which meant that I had to make multiple trips to and from the boat just to fill it up. When it was all said and done, I had 120 scrap iron inside of the boat, plus 14 more in my inventory. I had to leave behind about 25 scrap iron simply because I had no way of hauling it back in the same trip. Not to mention all the other valuable shit that I pulled out of that sunken crypt. I mean, just look at it!
Oh my gosh, just look at it!
I was feeling pretty good about myself at this point in time. I had set out to tame my little section of the swamp, and I had done just that. Granted, I was incredibly conservative with how I approached every fight, and didn't even try to tackle that abomination, but perhaps my confidence would grow with time. After all, it took me a long time to build up my courage and skills to be able to take down those trolls, so why should the abominations be any different? For now, I was just glad to have made it home safely with all of this loot in hand. Compared to the previous few days, day 67 was really boring. I had a lot of smelting to do, which meant that I had a lot of wood cutting to do. I couldn't really go anywhere since I had to constantly maintain the kiln and smelters, so I was just stuck at base tinkering with things. I decided to make a frost resistance mead base for the very off chance that I defeated the bone mass before the 100 days was up, and made another batch of poison resistance potions. Next, I decided to craft some iron nails, thinking it was going to unlock the next tier of boat for me, but alas, it didn't. I did get this sweet raven thrown out of it though, which helped boost my comfort level. I perused through the crafting menu to see what all I could craft for my base, and to my surprise, there were quite a few bench upgrades that I had to craft. Most of these were really expensive, and really only helped to level up my forge though, so I didn't really deem it necessary at the time. What I did deem necessary was the stonecutter table, which unlocked the stone building tier and this thing called a sharpening stone. Crafting the sharpening stone unlocked the grinding wheel, which was a very cheap forge upgrade that I could make right away. The only other thing that I wanted to make right now was the food preparation table, which unlocked raw fish. It just so happens that I had found a perch lying on the beach a long time ago, which I now use to craft said raw fish. Cooking this said raw fish resulted in cooked fish. Cooked fish was a pretty solid food option, but it was really only viable if I decided to purchase that fishing pole off the merchant. The last thing I did was craft the new huntsman bow using some of the iron I'd been smelting. It was a clear and definitive upgrade over the fine wood bow, so no sense of putting it off any longer. I was still stuck at base smelting up all of that iron that I brought back, so I started tinkering with the stone structures. I didn't really have any idea in mind, but I figured I would just mess around and see where things went. Flash forwards an embarrassing amount of time, and I had something. A watchtower? An archer's tower? Who knows, but it looks sweet. I spent the rest of the day mass cutting trees for more charcoal. That is, until something unexpected happened back at base.
Oh, shit.
As soon as I realized what was going on, I immediately started dropping all of my belongings on the ground or in the cart. I wasn't even going to try to fight these things, I just wanted to get them away from my base. I tried luring them into a campfire I had in the Black Forest, but it didn't seem to do much of any damage. Eventually, I just ran into a nearby crypt I had cleared in the past. I spent a few minutes just hanging out here, and when I loaded back out, there was no signs of the trolls. Sure, I had to scrape my gear and pride off the floor, but I didn't lose my base and I lived to see another day, so I have no regrets. My maids were done brewing at this point, which meant that I could theoretically enter the winter biome whenever I felt like it. The last thing I did was replace my campfire with the new and improved stone hearth, which looked incredibly better and made cooking a lot easier. Day 69, I fucked your mom. Just kidding. She fucked me. All jokes aside, I had a bit more smelting to do to finish off all that scrap iron, which meant that I couldn't stray terribly far from base again. I spent the entirety of the day just hunting and gathering berries while managing all the smelters. All of this went as expected, until right before bedtime when something unexpected happened.
Oh shit, hang on, I'm under attack.
So, a swamp raid. No big deal, right? Well, this happened at a pretty awkward time. You see, I had just banked all of my food and potions without realizing it, and all of my food was below the halfway mark. In Valheim, that basically means that the stat boost you receive falls off a fucking cliff. Despite my best efforts to stay above them and avoid damage, I managed to take a stray arrow, which took me down to about 16 HP.
Whoa! No healing potions.
Technically, I did manage to hold my weight until the siege was over, but alas, without any healing potions or a way of refreshing my food...
Oh, you gotta be shitting me!
Watching this back in editing actually pisses me off. This happened so fast that I had no idea how I even managed to die, and I had to rewatch this back multiple times to even spot the moment that it happened. The Draugr that killed me never even broke stride. He just rolled through my base like Legolas and fired a heat-seeking arrow directly at my dick. And to add salt to the wound...
Oh, I'm f***ing back here? Oh, come on!
Was this a big deal? No. But it was a nuisance because now I had to replace my bed in the swamp base just to purposefully die again, just so I could spawn at the sacrificial stones and run back to my main base, which was still being overran by swamp creatures. Eventually I overcame the horde, but as you just witnessed, I ended up losing all of my gear in the process. It was becoming more and more obvious that my base wasn't up to scratch. Raids were becoming more frequent, and I had to upgrade my base defenses. I spent all of day 70 converting my exterior walls to stone, thinking that surely they would be able to withstand whatever the game threw at me. Valheim has a pretty sick sense of humor though, because before I could finish my defenses, eat, or properly gear up, this happened.
Oh, are you f***ing serious? Oh my god. I haven't finished my base defenses yet. Good lord. F*** you, stop it!
Despite my persuasive negotiation abilities, they in fact did not stop. If anything, they became more aggressive. Their club hits were absolutely shredding my new stone walls, and I simply wasn't DPSing them down fast enough to stop all the incoming damage. Thinking on my feet as best I could, I started pulling them to different areas of my walls to spread out their damage. This at least allowed me to finish off one of them, but I was not in a good position. My food was expiring, I had no armor, no rested buff, it was nighttime, my character was cold, the sun was in my eyes, they had the land advantage, you get the idea. I held out for as long as I could inside of my base, but eventually that last troll broke through.
Leave my tower alone! Oh shit.
Now I literally cannot make this up. Watch how this fight ended.
Oh, are you serious? Oh my god!
If you didn't quite catch that, I'll break it down for you. A grey dwarf hit me with a rock, which staggered me into an animation lock, and then a neck killed me. I died to a fucking neck. Now my pride was severely hurt at this point, and there was no way I was letting that troll or anything else live, so I went back with a stone axe and finished the job. I spent the entire rest of the night fixing my base walls and tweaking small sections that weren't quite right. I spent the entirety of day 71 refining my work and improving little sections of the base that have needed it for a long time. For example, I added this roof over top of my deck so I didn't have to constantly repair it. After 2 days of sieges and tinkering, I finally got my exterior stone walls where I wanted them and felt pretty good about future raids. Now I could have added sharp spikes to make these walls even more defensible, but they were pretty expensive and didn't have the greatest durability, so I opted not to for now. With my recent harvest of carrots, I was able to produce another batch of high-quality food, which was going to be necessary for my journey back to the swamp. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for my redemption arc. I had wanted to do this sooner, but the constant raids and base upgrades really sidetracked me. All of the iron had finished smelting days ago, and it was time for some gear upgrades. I crafted the full set of iron armor, the iron atgear, and the trollhide cape, all of which added up to a staggering 43 armor. This was by far the most geared I had ever been in this series so far, but now I just had to keep it that way. Now despite all of these gear upgrades, I still wasn't where I wanted to be to fight the bone mass boss. The iron atgear is not the greatest weapon to use in that fight since it deals pierce damage, and the boss is weak to blunt. Getting my hands on an iron mace for the bone mass fight would be ideal, plus I still had to recraft my huntsman bow. If you're not piecing all of this together, I'll spell it out for you. I somehow still needed more iron. There was no sense of rushing into the boss fight unprepared, and where it's located was completely uncharted territory for me. If I was going to venture that far from base, I had to make sure that I had everything I needed to stay alive and tackle the boss. This meant that I had to think of everything ahead of time. One of those things was the fact that I would need a forge to repair things once I traveled there, which cost 6 copper bars to craft, and as you may have guessed it, I didn't have any more copper. I was so sick of mining copper at this point, so I really only grabbed what was necessary and headed back to base. My sights were set on a different objective today. I wanted to travel back to the merchant south of me to see if his inventory had changed at all. I recalled from previous playthroughs that his inventory always seemed to shift after a boss was defeated, and I never actually checked him after the Elder. I decided to travel down this narrow river towards the merchant when the situation got a little bit sketchy.
Oh, motherfucker. Oh, god damn it.
Once again, the situation was really not in my favor. My food was about to expire, it was getting dark outside, and I couldn't see anything with all this foliage in my face. Despite proving to myself that I could take down a troll with nothing but a flint spear, I didn't want a chance losing all of my new gear just because I was careless. I wasn't entirely sure how much armor I needed to tank a hit from a troll, and I wasn't about to test it now. So what did I do? I ran home like a bitch and slept the night off.
Alrighty then.
The next morning I ran back to my boat, and no surprise, the troll didn't go anywhere. I felt better about fighting him now, though, because it was daytime and I had a full stomach. Like I said in the previous day, I wasn't entirely confident that my iron armor would actually tank a hit from him, so I just kept my distance and plinked him to death. With him out of the way, I hopped back on my carve and set sail for the trader, although the wind was certainly not in my favor. Just like I had expected, the trader's inventory had updated and had a few more new items. I bought the Thunderstone thinking that it might unlock the Frostner Hammer, but it only unlocked the Obliterator, which I really didn't need. After this, I purchased an Emir Flesh, which didn't unlock anything at the moment, but I could have sworn it was used to craft a two-handed iron hammer. I speculated that I was still missing a trophy from the swamp before it unlocked. Next, I finally purchased a fishing rod and a bunch of fishing bait. Fish were pretty easy to acquire and a pretty solid food option in the mid-game, so I felt that this was a reasonable purchase. A not-so-reasonable purchase was the Megan Jord belt. Megan Jord? I still can't say it. This thing increased my weight by 150, which would be incredible for hauling scrap iron out of the swamp, but also really risky to wear given how costly it is. On the way back to base, I decided to put my new fishing pole to good use. This river was packed with perch and pike, and I figured I might as well snag a few on my way through. Once I got back to base and cleaned them all up, I had a solid little stack of 15 raw fish in case I needed them. Day 74, I gathered some more core wood so I could remake Stagbreaker for the millionth time and spent the rest of the day sailing back to the swamp. I just happened to reach it at nightfall and was able to go right to sleep. The first thing in the morning, I ran over to the other sunken crypt to unlock it, but before I dove in, I needed to take care of something. It was becoming quite obvious that this abomination wasn't going anywhere, and I was sick of always trying to dodge it, so I deposited all of my items into a chest and went out to confront it. My plan was to lure it out of the area, but also practice dodging some of its attacks in case I wanted to take one down at some point. This is how it went. But I'm a stubborn man and decided to go back for more. Honestly, I was doing really good with timing the dodges. I held my ground for a while in this 1v1, but in Valheim things rarely ever remain 1v1. After more mobs showed up, I decided it was time to bail. With nothing to lose, I decided to run around the swamp looking for turnips, but I wasn't able to find any. I did end up finding a bunch more sunken crypts to the north of me though, so this excursion wasn't for nothing. Eventually I died, but that was fine. The real goal for today was to clear that second crypt back at my base. Unfortunately, this crypt was incredibly small. It only had a few chambers, which meant that the loot was pretty poor. The only notable thing was when I found this ancient bark in a chest, which unlocked some new weapons, and best of all, a brand new longship.
Oh, there we go. Alright, that's what I needed.
This was going to be a must-have for making that painful journey to the bone mass, if I ever even got that far. The next morning I decided to do another naked run looking for turnips and dungeons. I found this little cluster of 3 dungeons to the north not far from shore, so I was pretty sure this was going to be my next harvesting spot. I disassembled my crafting stations at the treehouse and set sail for further up the coast. Just like last time, I decided to build a treehouse since it seemed to be one of the safest ways to live here. It was already nighttime when I was putting up the finishing touches on the place, but I still needed a campfire so I could sleep. I didn't have any stone on me, which meant that I had to go out harvesting stone. Unfortunately, I was an idiot and placed the fire too far out from underneath my base, so the rain just immediately extinguished it. With 2 wraiths looming around in the sky, I didn't feel like constantly testing fate, so I just decided to bunk out in my treehouse for the night. In the morning, I grabbed a few pieces of stone and raised a pillar of earth using a hoe so I could place my campfire down. I made the bold move of running around to each of the sunken crypts I had found to unlock all the gates, including a 4th crypt I stumbled across. I was on my way back to base to bank the swamp key when something extraordinary happened.
Ooh, turnips? Oh! Oh, turnip seeds! Oh, I see them. I know about them. Oh! Oh my god. Ah. You blob. Ghost, don't you dare. Aha.
Unfortunately for me, the wraith did indeed dare. I held my weight for a while dodging its attacks, but my arrows were barely scratching it, and trying to melee was a bit tough with the timing of its attacks. With my stamina pool dwindling and more mobs showing up on the scene, the writing was on the wall.
Oh my god! Oh, come on! Are you serious? Come on!
Now there's not a ton to recap here outside of I played this poorly. I had minimal experience fighting wraiths up until this point, and wasn't really sure how to counterattack. One thing was for sure though, my slow movement speed didn't help, so I wasn't so sure that iron armor was the answer anymore. This was by far the biggest L I had taken in the playthrough so far. All of that iron armor, gone. My gear, gone. The swamp key, gone. The turnip seeds, gone. Another fucking antler pick, gone. Don't even get me started on Stagbreaker. With nothing left to lose, I decided to make one more loop around the swamp looking for turnip seeds, just so I didn't have to leave empty-handed. After a bit of searching, I did eventually luck out.
Ooh, turnips. Okay. Okay, we found some more. We're good. Oh, and the bog witch. Okay.
I refrained from harvesting them at that moment in time, though, knowing I would probably not be able to make it back to the treehouse with them alive at night. I decided to self-delete with the skeleton's assistance and slept the night off. I managed to grab those seeds the next morning and immediately set sail back to base. I would show you the clip of me grabbing them, but unfortunately I forgot to hit the record button. Believe me, I have nothing to hide in this playthrough where I've died countless times. I'm just a bad content creator. Forgive me. I spent the rest of the day sailing back to base. Most of it was uneventful except for this part.
Oh, no. No, I don't think so. Why do I always find one when I have no bow? No! F*** off! Alright. Very good.
As soon as I got back to base, I slapped those turnips in the ground, replanted all of my carrots, and started smelting the handful of scrap that I had left. In the morning, I was able to remake the huntsman bow that I had lost, but I had very little time to celebrate because I was already being sieged by swamp creatures. It was pretty touch and go for a bit against these Draugr archers, but I simply took my time between shots and repaired my walls when I needed to. The stone walls held up great during the siege, and it was nice to see that things were maybe finally going my way. I spent the entire rest of the day hunting for food, deer hide, and leather scraps. There was just no way around these types of grinds. It had to happen at some point, so I figured better now than later. By the time the evening rolled around, I finally had enough iron smelted to craft the iron mace, which was going to be my best-in-slot melee weapon against the bone mass if I decided to melee him. We've all seen how risky melee can be, but it certainly was the fastest way to DPS him down if I had the balls to do it. The next morning I cooked up some breakfast, and yes, you guessed it, remade Stagbreaker for the umpteenth time. Now, I was in a bit of a predicament here. I needed Ancient Bark to craft that long ship that I unlocked, but Ancient Bark could only be acquired as a loot drop, which was rare, or by cutting down ancient trees in the swamp. Naturally, that's the far more reliable method, but in order to cut down those trees, I needed a bronze axe or higher. I lost my bronze axe when I died, and I was fresh out of bronze. You might be able to guess where this is going. Here's another predicament, though. I got sidetracked. I found this buried crypt in the Black Forest and thought, you know what? Some extra Surtling cores would be kind of nice. After all, I was planning on gathering more iron to smelt, and with limited time left in this challenge to defeat the bone mass, I would need to speed up production anyways. So, I completed 2 crypts. They were pretty straightforward, and I ended up with quite a few Surtling cores when it was all said and done. Unfortunately, it was dark out by the time I finished, so the day was kind of just a waste. The next morning, though, I was on it. By mid-morning, I had gathered 20 pieces of raw copper and returned home to smelt it all. By that time, those turnips I had planted finally grown to full size, and I was able to harvest a few to unlock the spice rack. I couldn't make it yet, though, because it required turnips to craft, and if I used them to make it, I couldn't replant them. So I just turned those turnips into more seeds and replanted all of my carrots while waiting for the copper. With bronze in hand, I was finally able to recraft my bronze axe, which meant that I could go back to the swamp to harvest ancient bark anytime. But if I was going to set sail for the swamp again, I wanted to be as efficient about it as I could be. It was a long journey back there, and I didn't want to sail there just for ancient bark. I decided to fully prepare for the trip like usual, with the intention of tackling some of those crypts I unlocked before I died. This meant crafting a bunch of food and potions and all that good stuff. I figured I could make the new longship once I got there, and then use it to sail back home. Basically, I stored all of the ingredients for it inside of my carve, with the exception of the ancient bark. By early morning, I was already setting sail for the swamp. Shortly into my trip, I came across another sea serpent, only this time I was actually ready to take it on. It took quite a few arrows, but eventually I whittled it down and snagged my first supply of serpent meat. The rest of the trip was absolutely miserable. The wind was against me the entire time, which made sailing really slow, and on top of this, it was constantly storming, so I just kept crashing into rocks and sandbars the entire way there. I stopped at my usual resting place before the swamp, only to get absolutely swarmed by mobs for the next 10 minutes straight. When I finally thought I had finished everything off and was sailing downriver, this happened.
Oh, you've got to be shitting me.
This troll was directly in my path to the swamp base, which meant that I had to fight him. All the commotion of fighting this second troll drew in a bunch of other mobs, and as you can see, it turned into a giant mess. Mind you, I haven't even made it to the swamp yet. I finally made it to my first swamp base by mid-morning. Ancient trees were fairly easy to find and cut down, but like harvesting anything else in this game, it draws a lot of attention. This meant that I was constantly fighting mobs between axe swings. If I let my guard down for even a second, it could have been instant death. This 2-star leech was especially concerning, as if the initial hit didn't kill me, the lingering poison very well may have. After a long day of fighting, I finally gathered enough ancient bark to craft the longship, and it was absolutely gorgeous. This puppy was way bigger, tankier, faster, and best of all had a ton more storage than that little carve. I didn't want to risk sailing to my other swamp base at night though, so I opted to spend the rest of the night here. Come morning time, I was ready to sail to my other base, but first I wanted to destroy my old ship so I could get the resources back. As a reminder of just how dangerous literally everything is on hardcore mode, I wanted to leave in this clip where a no-star leech tags me a single time.
Oh. Holy hell.
I wasn't feeling confident that the healing potion was even going to keep me alive through the 28 seconds of poison, so as a precaution, I banked most of my things in the chest. I did survive through it, but only because I popped that medium healing potion. If I didn't use that thing when I did, I would be back harvesting copper right now. Anyways, I sailed down the shore and reached my other treehouse by mid-morning. Without wasting any time, I dove straight into the closest sunken crypt available to me. I wasn't in there for more than 10 seconds before I was getting swarmed by mobs. Luckily, I was able to cheese most of these fights by staying up on this raised platform. I was even able to take down my first Draugr Elite doing this, but then things got uncomfortable. A 1-star Draugr Archer showed up, which meant that I could no longer cheese things. I dodged a few of his attacks, but when I noticed how little damage I was dealing in return, I decided it wasn't worth the risk. I bailed out of that crypt and marked it on my map as a hazard so I didn't run in there later. The crypt next door was way more successful. Everything was going according to plan, and Stagbreaker was putting in some work. I spent the entire rest of the day harvesting iron and banking it outside like I had before. Day 85 was no different, with the exception that I made a few trips back to the boat just to say I secured some iron. But you guys get the idea. Mine, bank, kill things, mine, bank, nearly get one shot. Oh my god. Can't drop my guard for a second. I had finished the crypt by the following morning and was just making trips back and forth from storage boxes to my longship. By the time it was all said and done, I had well over 100 scrap iron sitting in my boat. Now, if I was going to take down the bone mass before the 100-day mark, there was no way I could keep taking on these dungeons. The journey back home was really long, and I had a lot of smelting, crafting, and cooking to do to prepare for the even longer journey to where bone mass was. With this in mind, I decided to be a little ballsy. I knew the Bog Witch was going to have some useful food items for sale, so I made the bold move of running through the swamp to her location. It was a bit sketchy at times, I'm not gonna lie, but the moment that I saw her protective bubble, I knew it was all worth it. I brought along a lot of the pearls, amber, and rubies I had been looting in those dungeons, so I had a bit of gold to work with. There was a lot of stuff to choose from, but I opted for the serving tray and Seafarer's herbs. The serving tray was used to make feast, and the Seafarer's herbs were used in conjunction with that serpent meat I found to make one of those feasts. As soon as I got back to the boat, I tried banking the new items for safekeeping when a blob literally hopped aboard my ship. I swear, you cannot let your guard down for a second while playing this game. Anyways, with the iron, serving tray, and herbs in hand, I started the long journey back in the dark. I started to fight another sea serpent on my way home, but then I crashed my ship into a sandbar.
Oh. That's unfortunate.
Oh, I'm sure that'll buff out. It'll be fine. I had finally reached my base by morning and had a lot of work to do over the next few days. As always, the cart made hauling all that iron scrap into the base pretty easy, but the long smelting process was about to begin. I couldn't really venture too far from base as there was a lot of management involved with smelting, so I just stuck around and tinkered. I recrafted my troll hide hood and deer cape and upgraded all of my wooden cooking stations to a single iron one. Aside from looking dope, this thing was needed to hold the weight of serpent meat. Oddly enough, 3 of my beehives were no longer functioning and I had no idea why. Literally nothing has changed in my base while I was gone, but apparently I was going to have to relocate them at some point. Upon claiming my first piece of serpent meat, I unlocked the Sailor's Bounty Feast, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Feasts are basically really good food options that can be placed down like an object in your base and eaten from when you need them. In this case, it was literally the best food option I had available to me, or at least for one of my food slots. In between cutting down trees and tearing down buildings so I could make charcoal, I was cooking up more serpent meat and fish for the feast. While that was cooking, I decided to start relocating all of those beehives. Looking back on all of this in editing, I admit that it seems a bit scatterbrained, but I promise you that multitasking all this stuff was the most efficient thing I could have done. I ended up placing all of those beehives on top of my stone wall, which somehow made them all happy again. By the late evening, I had cooked enough fish to craft 2 Sailor's Bounties, which would be plenty enough food to last me clear until the end of the series. I placed down a small table and slapped the feast on top of it using the serving tray, and it was a beautiful sight to behold. I spent the rest of the night gathering more wood for charcoal, and in case you're wondering, yes, I did end up using those Surtling cores I found to make more kilns. It just took me all day to think of it. I spent the entirety of day 88 smelting scrap iron and cutting down trees for charcoal. That's it. I had it all finished by the end of the day though, and was able to go on a crafting spree. I remade all 3 pieces of my iron armor and the ancient bark spear, although it did not bark as advertised. Feeling a bit ballsy, I even decided to upgrade all of the armor pieces and the iron mace to level 2, reasoning that if I died at this point in the series, it probably wouldn't matter much anyways. I spent all of the next morning packing my cart full of things I was going to need to fight the bone mass. It was going to be a long journey to where the boss fight was located, and that was all under the expectation that I could even sail the whole way there. Once I got there, I was going to have to establish a base of ops, clear the area, and prep the grounds for the actual fight, leaving me no extra time for multiple trips or any further delays. By mid-morning, I was feeling pretty confident that I had thought of pretty much every eventuality, and I finally pulled the trigger on setting sail. As expected, the trip was incredibly long, arduous, and downright scary. But I actually made much better time than I thought. The wind was in my favor for most of the trip, and the long ship hauls ass compared to that little carve. I didn't want to risk making a camp and sleeping the night off just to have the wind direction change on me, so I just decided to sail straight through the night. I was pulling into the bone mass swamp just as a new day began, which was perfect for avoiding wraiths or all the negative effects of being cold. Just like all of the other times, I got to work on establishing a small treehouse, only this time I built it a lot higher up than before. I figured that it would be safer in the long run, plus if push came to shove, I could always use it as an archer's tower to fight the bone mass. Now I knew ahead of time that I was going to be building higher up like this, and I came prepared. I brought along the resources for a stonecutter's table so I could attach a stone block to the tree. This allowed me to place a campfire on top of it so I could get the rested buff inside of my base. The placement was a bit janky though, so I ended up moving it underneath of my treehouse at a later point in time. I was trying to be as quiet as possible while I got the base up and running, but inevitably, mobs just kept wandering into the area. I used my huntsman bow as much as possible to dispatch of them quietly, which definitely helped to keep the chaos to a minimum. I had a bit of a fight on my hands in the late evening when this 1-star Draugr showed up, but I was able to time my dodges and use this ancient tree to line of sight his fire while I burned him down. The next morning, I was immediately greeted by another 1-star Draugr. I took my time and watched his animations to ensure that I didn't get one-shot like before. Before I could tackle the bone mass, I had to make sure the surrounding area was safe. The last thing I needed was to be balls deep in the boss fight, only to have a bunch of extra mobs wander into the scene. Like before, I used my huntsman bow to take things out as quietly as possible, then began placing campfires around to block creatures. That's another hat tip to Snazzy Games, thank you so much for this useful tip. There was a Surtling spawner nearby, which I handled in a vastly different manner. If you didn't know, the Surtling's arch nemesis is water, so I just used a hoe to lower the ground around the spawner, which would effectively kill them anytime they spawned. There was also a body pile inside a nearby stone building, so I went to town with Stagbreaker to get rid of it. By nighttime, I had finished quarantining about half of the boss spawn. The next morning, I was right back to it. There seemed to be a higher number of 1- and even 2-star mobs all throughout this swamp, and while I managed to avoid nearly all of their hits up until this point, no one's perfect all of the time.
Whoa! Ooh, mama.
Luckily, my iron armor came in clutch there, and I was able to tank the hit, so hopefully that means that bone mass won't completely one-shot me when the time comes. I spent most of the day quarantining more of the swamp and placing down structures to block creature spawns, but by the late evening, I was feeling pretty content with all of that. The last thing I had to do was even out all of the ground around the boss spawn using a hoe, so I didn't fall into the water while I was kiting him. I only got about half of this done before nightfall, though. Over the course of the night, I thought more and more about the idea of having a bonfire during the bone mass fight. I had watched a few videos online of people using nothing but a bonfire to defeat the boss, and I figured it might not be a bad idea to have it in my back pocket in case things went south. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough fine wood on me to make one, and there wasn't any good sources of it nearby, so I backburned the idea for now. Like a broke prostitute with the rent due, I spent the rest of the day hoeing.
Boom!
That is, until this happened.
Oh my god. There are trolls here.
While this was inconvenient, I was actually grateful it happened now and not during the boss fight. I didn't take any chances with this siege though, and I kept my distance to ensure that I didn't die. There were definitely 2 trolls that spawned, but I only killed one of them and I had no idea where the other one went. My only hope was that he found something in the swamp that either drew him away or was able to kill him so that I didn't have any surprises later. I spotted this little structure in the distance and decided to tear it apart for resources. Sometimes these swamp houses have furniture which yields fine wood, and while this did have a table and a bench, the bench just didn't exist. If that makes sense. Anyways, I didn't get enough fine wood for the bonfire, and it was already getting dark out, so I went back to the treehouse and slept the night off. No matter what, I was going to fight the bone mass today, but I wanted to make one more attempt at getting fine wood before I pulled the trigger. I spotted this other little swamp structure from my treehouse and decided to clear the mobs to check it out. Unfortunately, there was nothing here that gave fine wood, and I felt like I was just delaying the inevitable at this point, so I fully gave up on the idea. This meant that my only backup plan if I were to die here would be to range the bone mass from my treehouse. I returned to base for a quick re-up on my rested buff, and ate all 3 of my highest tier foods in preparation for the fight. No more prep was needed though, and I was done procrastinating. It was time to fight the bone mass.
Alright, here we go.
Good luck.
Thank you. I'm gonna need it. Oh. Done! Oh my god!
And just like that, I had taken down the bone mass. I can't explain to you how great it felt that moment in time to have this massive looming weight lifted off my shoulders. I recognize that it's only a video game achievement, and that most people won't care about something like this, but to know that I got knocked down time and time and time again, only to come back swinging, was a great feeling. Now the fight wasn't perfect, and in fact, I almost died as you saw in the beginning, but all of that preparation I had been doing is what saved me in the end. I dropped as low as 33 HP with that single hit, and if you run the numbers, I think you'll find that the only reason I lived was because of my exact gear and food. I mean, just think about it for a second. If I hadn't killed that sea serpent for its cooked meat, and then bought those herbs from the bog witch to make the sailor's feast, I probably wouldn't have had enough health to live through that hit. If I didn't have that level 2 iron armor, I probably wouldn't have tanked that hit. If I didn't have the level 2 iron mace, the fight would have drug on even longer, which would have increased the chances of me taking more hits, or even running out of the rested buff. All in all, everything culminated into a barely successful run, but a successful run nonetheless. Oh man, did you see that? The bone mass was all like, and I was like, taste mace, bitch! Oh, that was... you're not even listening, are you?
I'm still thinking about the deer.
Dude, we're way past that. I've killed trolls in melee. I've battled the undead. I've dodged abominations. I literally just killed a writhing pile of slime and body parts with a metal stick. How are you still on about the deer?
It's literally the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious. I've been teleporting gamers into Valheim for years, and no one has ever had to refight the deer. That shit was absolutely hysterical.
Alright, well, the show's over now. Bone Mass is dead, and there's only 5 days left in this challenge. I mean, like, what else do you expect me to do?
The ancient dragon motor awaits you in the mountains.
Dude, there's only 5 days left. There's no way I'm gonna kill Motor in 5 days.
Well, you better damn well try.
Fine, I'll give it a shot. Day 95 was spent sailing home. The wind was against me literally the entire time, so this was the speed that I was able to sail at. I hit up a few of those Leviathans on my way home just to break up the monotony, but I never ended up doing anything with the chitin anyways, so it was pretty pointless. I reached base by morning and spent a few minutes cleaning out my inventory and the boat. After that, I went straight to the sacrificial stones to slap the Bone Mass trophy on there. The Bone Mass buff was actually quite good, but since I was heading to the mountains, I reasoned that Icthir's buff was still probably the best one to take. I replanted my crops and finally had enough turnips to craft the spice rack. This unlocked a bunch of new food recipes for me, which I thought might be helpful for tackling the mountain.
Sir Gregor Clegane.
No, not that mountain, this mountain! I happened to stumble across the edge of one just to the north of me, so that's where I was preparing myself for. With only a few days left to actually attempt anything, I decided to start heading there now. On the way, my new wishbone started going off, which in the meadows meant there was buried treasure. Not that it did me a whole lot of good now, but it was still kinda cool. I reached the base of the mountain by nightfall and decided to slap together a little shelter to spend the night in. As soon as morning arrived, I started up the side of the mountain, being sure to pop my frost resistance and Icthir buff to get around. At the top of the hill, I encountered my first ever wolf and was able to get the drop on it. This unlocked a brand new bed, throne, and rug, while the meat gave me another cooking option. Inside this chest I found some frost arrows and onion seeds, which was exciting, but I knew I wasn't going to have time for farming anymore. Drakes were probably the most annoying things to deal with here, as they would always show up out of nowhere, spit their frost attacks, and fly away. The huntsman bow and fire arrows took them down pretty quickly though. As you've been witnessing, the wishbone was going absolutely crazy, which meant there was silver buried underground. I spent a good amount of time digging the area to find it, only to discover that my antler pickaxe would no longer suffice.
That's what she said.
If I was going to mine this, or the obsidian nodes located here, I would have to get a better pickaxe. It was at this moment, though, that I started to take things a little more seriously. Up until now, I kind of thought that tackling Motor would be a pipe dream. There was just no way I was going to find his spawn with only a few days left. That is, until I located his spawn. If I could manage to find 3 dragon eggs and mass craft some arrows in the next few days, this fight could actually, potentially happen? Conveniently, there was 1 dragon egg right beside him, so I only needed 2 more to make this fight a reality. Just up the mountain some more, I found my first ever frost cave, and while I didn't plan on entering it right then, the circumstances kind of called for it.
Oh. Is this gonna save me?
Unfortunately, being inside of a dungeon doesn't actually stop or time down raids, so I was basically just delaying the inevitable. I decided to man up and go face this pack of wolves like a man. After all, I had full iron armor, good food, frost resistance, healing potions. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Whoa! Oh!
So yeah, as it turns out, I can't handle that many wolves at once on a slope. Or probably on flat terrain. Or if I had an AK-47. The point is, I was f***ed the moment I stepped out of that cave. Probably the only thing that would have saved me here was if I had the materials to place down a workbench so I could use the hoe to raise myself up on a pillar. Other than that, I'm pretty sure I was doomed to fail. So, you're probably wondering, was this the end? You think I'm gonna give up that easy?
Good God, you're coming up with reasons. Good God, you're dragging it out. Good God, it's the changing of the seasons. I feel so raped. So follow me down and just fake it if you're out of direction. Fake it if you don't belong here. Fake it if you feel like affection. Whoa, you're such a fucking hypocrite. You used to know that the lies won't hide your flaws. No sense in hiding all of yours. You gave up on your dreams along the way. Yeah. Good God, you're coming up with reasons. Good God, you're dragging it out. Good God, it's the changing of the seasons. I feel so raped. So follow me down and just
So as you could probably tell, I wasn't that upset about this death. It was expected, to be honest. I'm simply not a good enough player to be attempting to rush motor like this, and I was simply out of time to approach it cautiously like I did the swamp. What I was upset about was the fact that every time I died, I immediately got raided.
I swear to God they have it programmed so that when you die, that's when you come under attack. I'm almost positive. It has to be. Oh my God, what is that? F***ing ghosts? What the hell?
I kited one of the wraiths away from the base and held my own for a bit, but eventually my luck just ran out. These ghosts and wraiths weren't going anywhere though, so I had to kite them around until the raid was over. This resulted in one of the funniest games of Ring Around the Rosie. Something about this scenario of interdimensional beings constantly chasing me around the same rock in a field hundreds and hundreds of times over again is just really funny to me. But now you're probably wondering, surely this is the end, right? Not even close.
Whoa, you're such a fucking hypocrite.
Okay, so that was definitely the final nail in the coffin. But before I ended things off in this 100 days journey, there was at least one more thing I had to do. At the very least, I wanted to steal that dragon egg I had found and bring it back to base. Sort of like a trophy of sorts. The journey back took a long time on foot, and the locals weren't very happy when I took it, but I was able to use their bitter hatred for one another against them. As I walked down the mountain with this 200-pound dragon egg stored snugly inside of my asshole, I began to reflect on the journey thus far. I started thinking about all of the struggles I had encountered along the way, all of the ridiculous mechanics that I had to overcome to make it here in this very moment, sailing home in a longship, with a 200-pound dragon egg inside my asshole. I bested the ancient deer Ichthir. I waged war on the fabled Ent known as the Elder. I had to kill Ichthir a second time, but we don't talk about it. I defeated the writhing pile of body parts known as the bone mass, and now I sit comfortably inside of my base, staring at this beautiful dragon egg that I just removed from my asshole. And it was at this moment that it dawned on me. Admittedly, I might not be as good at the game as a player like Scales, or as knowledgeable as Snazzy Games, or maneuver carts like Emma Potato, but I guarantee you that none of them can shove an entire 200-pound dragon egg up their ass like I just did. So in the end, who's the real Valheim veteran here? If you've actually managed to make it to the end of this video, then I can't help but think that you've enjoyed my 100 days journey. If that's the case, then please be sure to leave this video a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. I want to give a special shout out to Scales, Snazzy Games, and Emma Potato for being incredibly kind and allowing me to use clips of their videos alongside my journey. Granted, I'm not sure that any of you understood just how stupid this video was going to be, or how I was going to incorporate your clips, but hopefully you can see the humor in it and take it for what it is. There's going to be links to their videos and respective channels in the description down below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my Valheim playthrough, and I hope to see you again at my next 100 days journey.
Congratulations, Bunna! You've spent the last 100 days in the realm of Valheim and completed the challenge I tasked you with.
Why did you task me with surviving in Valheim anyways? It's not like I'm even skilled at this game, or really any survival game for that matter.
Isn't it obvious? Bunna Gaming wasn't going anywhere. You've had 7 years to make your mark in gaming and failed to do it. So I'm giving you a second chance.
A second chance? So what, you're just gonna teleport me from one survival game to the next and make a cohesive recurring series that reliably fits inside of a niche that attracts a certain type of viewer that will probably do better with views and audience retention?
Precisely.
Huh. Why didn't I think of that? But wait, what do you get out of this?
Entertainment.
Entertainment?
Bitch, I am still laughing about that deer.
So you're not gonna let me leave after all then, are you?
I am an entity of my word. Step into the portal to leave the realm of Valheim.
It's just gonna be another survival game, isn't it?
Maybe.
Oh, goddammit. Fine. I'll go. But don't make it as hard as this challenge was.
No promises.
Oh, you've gotta be kidding me.
Oh, this is gonna be funny.